Researchers often claim that sharks aren't interested in attacking humans, but the terrifying encounters we're about to share tell a much darker story. In this video, we'll explore some of the worst shark attacks ever recorded, from relentless ambushes to deadly strikes that defy expectations. By the end of the video, we'll prove the researchers wrong. Let's dive into the first attack. Andrew Bannister made his way to the shoreline on Sunday, October 11, 2020. At 47, Andrew was a warm, gentle soul, adored by his 5 children and cherished by friends who admired his easygoing nature. Sundays held a special place in his routine. After spending the morning with his family at church, he would head to the coast. Surfing was his time to unwind, a moment of peace where he could reconnect with himself before returning to the loving chaos of family life. Andrew was a careful man, always respecting the sea's power. He had a ritual before entering the water, scanning the waves for any unusual currents, watching for rips, and noting the water's clarity, knowing that murkier depths could invite curious sea life. He even paid attention to the birds above, aware that their sudden flurry might indicate activity below the surface. This day was no different. After his familiar check of the surroundings, confident in the calmness of the surf, he took a deep breath, feeling the thrill of the waves awaiting him. With a smile, Andrew entered the water, ready to lose himself in the ocean that had always been his escape. As Andrew waded into the surf, he greeted familiar faces, sharing a quick wave and a smile with his fellow surfers. The water was inviting, each wave rolling in with the promise of a perfect ride. After paddling out, he soon caught his first big wave, unaware that it would be one of the last he would ever surf. Nothing seemed amiss. The sky above was clear, bright blue, dotted with soft clouds, and a gentle breeze kept the coastal air comfortably cool. But beneath the seemingly calm waters of Kelp Beds Beach lurked a danger few could have imagined. Even in these clear waters, sharks often move unnoticed, their forms blending into the depths below. And on this very day, a formidable presence was prowling the area, a 19-foot great white shark. Great whites are known for their stealth and precision, using their powerful senses to track prey with extraordinary accuracy. They often circle from below, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, a strategy that gives them an almost mythical aura of menace. For Andrew, the shark's approach was sudden and unseeable. For the great white, however, it was a carefully calculated move. In an instant, the water exploded into chaos. The great white launched upward with astonishing force, striking Andrew hard and knocking him from his board. He barely had a moment to react before the shark's massive jaws closed around his leg, gripping with a force that could crush bone. Great whites possess the power to generate almost 4,000 pounds of bite force, and intensity evolved to tear through flesh and drag prey into the depths below. In that terrifying moment, as he was pulled beneath the surface, Andrew's day of freedom on the waves had transformed into a struggle against an ancient predator. Nearby surfers reacted instantly, their laughter dissolving into gasps and shouts of alarm as they saw the thrashing in the water. Panic struck as they paddled frantically toward the commotion, trying to reach Andrew. But as they neared, the scene grew eerily still. The ocean had swallowed him whole, and the shoreline that had moments before felt so alive now stood in stunned silence, marked by the desperate struggle that had just unfolded. Only Andrew's surfboard remained, drifting aimlessly on the water's surface. The board, bearing jagged, unmistakable bite marks, was a chilling testament to the ferocity of the attack. Nearly split in half by the force of the great white's jaws, it confirmed the terrifying power of the predator that had claimed him. Just minutes ago, Andrew had entered the water as a joyful father, fresh from a peaceful morning at church. Now he was gone, taken by one of the ocean's most feared creatures. Two of the surfers, still reeling from what they had witnessed, rushed back to shore and alerted the authorities. Emergency responders arrived swiftly and a large search operation commenced, with teams scouring the waters around Kelpbeds Beach in hopes of recovering Andrew. Yet, as hours passed, the hope of finding him faded, leaving only the heartbreaking reality for his family. They mourned the sudden loss of a beloved father, husband, and friend, a devoted man who had been tragically taken by the unforgiving sea. On October 12th, the day following the attack, only fragments of Andrew's wetsuit washed ashore. Torn and marked by deep indentations, these pieces provided the final confirmation. Andrew had encountered a massive 19-foot great white, one of the largest sharks ever recorded in the area. These tattered remnants were solemnly returned to his family, serving as the only tangible memory of him after his body had vanished into the depths. It was a warm May morning in 2019 when Thomas Smiley, 65, walked down the beach toward the water at Kapali Beach Park on the western shore of Maui. For the past 14 years, this had been a place of retreat for Thomas and his wife Gail, a sanctuary where they would recharge and reflect. It had been a tradition for them, and now, in his early retirement, Thomas had planned to spend more time enjoying the things he loved: his family, his hobbies, and the serene shores of Hawaii. Thomas had retired just the year before from his successful career as an optometrist, having owned practices in Roseville and Sacramento. But retirement wasn't just about the rest, it was about living life to the fullest, spending more time with his family and pursuing his passions. He'd always been the adventurous type, an antique and muscle car enthusiast, a member of the Sports Car Club of America, and a vintage stock car racer. In fact, just 2 weeks away, he was due to race his prized 1965 Corvette in an advanced pro class on tracks across Northern California. But today, he was looking forward to his last swim before returning to California the following day. Thomas was highly accomplished, having earned an undergraduate degree in cell biology from UCLA and a doctorate in optometry from UC Berkeley. His intellectual pursuits had always been matched by his thirst for adventure. Whether it was racing cars, scuba diving, or swimming in the Pacific, Thomas embraced every opportunity with enthusiasm. This day, however, would take a tragic turn. It was 9 a.m. when he waded into the water alone. Gail, as always, was content to watch from the shore, where the sun warmed the sand and the waves whispered softly. She had no inkling that this would be the last time she would see Thomas alive. Kapali Beach was a picturesque stretch of coastline, with clear turquoise waters that shimmered under the morning sun. But beneath the surface, hidden from the sun's rays, a silent threat was approaching. A tiger shark, one of the largest and most aggressive species of sharks, its movements being tracked by the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Authorities were aware of the predator's presence, but there were no warning signs posted, and tourists continued to enter the water without hesitation. The shark, a 15-foot beast weighing over 1,000 pounds, had been swimming along the shore for hours undisturbed. Thomas, unaware of the danger beneath him, swam parallel to the shore about 60 yards out. He was an experienced swimmer accustomed to the ocean, a man who had spent decades in the water without incident. But as he moved through the calm waters, a shadow began to loom behind him. The tiger shark, drawn to the movement, circled slowly, its massive body cutting through the water with precision. Without warning, the shark lunged. Its massive teeth sank into Thomas's left leg, the sheer force of the bite dragging him beneath the surface. The pain was immediate, excruciating. Thomas knew exactly what was happening. The shark had attacked, but the fight for his life had only just begun. Gail, who had been enjoying the morning from the lanai, heard a commotion. She looked out across the ocean where she saw people pointing and gesturing. There was someone struggling in the water, thrashing around. Her heart skipped a beat. Was it Thomas? She watched for a moment, confused. It wasn't like him to struggle in the water. Thomas was a strong swimmer, confident in the ocean's embrace. But something wasn't right. The man in the water was flailing, his body convulsing in a way that didn't seem natural. Gail's worry deepened. On the shore, bystanders stared helplessly as Thomas fought to make it back to safety. The water around him turned red, clouded with blood as he struggled to stay afloat. He was losing strength, his movements slowing, the attack taking its toll. Witnesses on the beach could only watch in horror as Thomas, his leg mangled, attempted to swim toward the shore, but with every stroke it seemed like he was sinking further. The life-saving jet ski had been scrambled late, too late to intervene before the worst had already happened. By the time the police rescue unit arrived on the watercraft, Thomas was unresponsive, his body barely moving. The shark had retreated, disappearing beneath the surface. The rescuers worked quickly, pulling him onto the jet ski, his body limp and bloodied, a pool of dark water trailing behind them as they sped back toward the shore. Gail stood frozen on the beach, her gaze fixed on the water. The moment the rescuers reached the shore and pulled Thomas's lifeless body from the jet ski, her heart stopped. She knew, without seeing his face, that it was him. It was Thomas. His swimsuit, his build, everything confirmed her worst fear. She ran to him, crying out as she dropped to his side. He was pale, unresponsive. The love of her life, the man she had been inseparable from for over 40 years, was gone. Despite attempts at CPR, it was too late. Thomas's injuries were catastrophic. His left leg severed below the knee, his wrist shredded from fighting off the shark. He had bled out, losing too much blood to survive. The attack came without warning, no signs, no barricades. Thomas, a man who had faced life's challenges with vigor, was caught off guard in the wrong place at the wrong time. His death sent shockwaves through his family. A man who lived for adventure and loved his family deeply, Thomas left behind 3 children and 6 grandchildren, who now mourned his loss. Gail, his wife of 42 years, was left to navigate life without him. Though she didn't blame officials, Gail knew that had they been informed of the shark's presence, Thomas would have stayed on shore. Hawaii averages about 20 shark attacks a year. But Thomas's was the first fatal one since 2015 and the 6th of the year. Some linked the rise in attacks to climate change, but for Gail, none of that mattered. Her world had changed in an instant, and now she would have to move forward without him. December 19, 1981, and South Moss Beach in California was dominated by the powerful forces of nature. Overcast skies loomed overhead and the wind sliced through the air, creating perfect 15-foot swells. For 24-year-old Louis Boren, this was just another day. Born and raised in California, he had spent countless hours at South Moss Beach, where the waves became his playground. That morning, after a hearty breakfast and in good spirits, Louis was ready for a day of surfing with his friend. The beach was empty. Most people stayed away because of the stormy weather, but that didn't deter Louis and his friend. Laughter soon echoed above the roar of the surf as they rode the powerful waves, carving through the water with ease. The ocean seemed theirs alone, the rhythm of each wave pulling them further into the moment. They kept surfing as the morning gradually gave way to the afternoon. Eventually, it was time to leave. They headed to a nearby beach club for lunch, where they talked about surfing, life, and all the things young men in their 20s usually discuss. At approximately 2 p.m., they returned to the parking lot, ready to part ways, not realizing it would be the last time they'd see each other. Louis had every intention of heading home as he stepped into his car, but something stopped him. The empty beach and the perfect waves were calling. It felt almost too perfect to pass up, so he decided to hit the water one last time, or so he thought. So Lewis made his way back to the beach, this time without his friend. As he donned his wetsuit and began paddling out, he looked at the ocean, thinking he would soon ride some perfect waves. But Lewis wasn't alone. Below him, hidden in the icy, swirling depths, a massive great white shark circled silently, just out of sight. It watched him, waiting. To the shark, Lewis was nothing more than a silhouette gliding across the water's surface, a potential meal in an unforgiving ocean. It wasn't malice or intent, just nature at its most brutal. Then, without any warning, the ocean erupted around him. The shark struck with such incredible force that Lewis was thrown out of the water before he could even scream. One moment he was paddling, and the next a crushing weight hit him like a freight train. The impact knocked him back into the water, disorienting him as he struggled to understand what had happened. He tried to turn to fight back, but the power of the creature was overwhelming. His body screamed in agony as the shark's teeth tore into his left chest, ripping out a chunk in one swift motion. And then, everything went quiet. No sound, no sensation, just silence and darkness. No one saw the horror unfold that day, with the beach deserted and silent as the ocean claimed its victim. The following day, however, the first signs of the tragedy emerged. Two surfers made a grim discovery when they came across Lewis's broken surfboard washed up on the shore. A large chunk was missing, as if something massive had bitten through it. About 15 yards away, they found the missing piece. The surfers took the damaged board to the Salinas Police Department, who then forwarded it to the supervising ranger at the beach for further investigation. Just a day later, one of Lewis's friends decided to file a missing persons report, as his car had remained parked at the beach untouched since he was last seen. By Monday, December 21st, suspicions began to grow. His surfboard had been discovered earlier, bearing deep gashes that hinted at a possible shark attack. The authorities, now fearing the worst, launched a search, hoping for answers. But it all remained unclear until Christmas Eve. On that day, the ocean revealed its dark secret. Lewis's body was discovered washed ashore half a mile from where he was last seen. His body was mostly intact except for a large, deep wound in his chest, matching the damage found on his board. The post-mortem report confirmed everyone's worst fears: severe injury due to a shark attack. Lewis's friends and family were heartbroken, mourning the loss of such an adventurous soul in such a tragic way. But the situation only grew more devastating. Days later, a marine biologist analyzed the bitten-off section of Lewis's surfboard and determined that the shark's jaws spanned approximately 18 inches wide, indicating the creature measured about 23 feet in length and weighed nearly 2 tons. It was unmistakably a great white shark, possibly one of the largest ever documented. Experts explained that sharks typically do not see humans as prey, and that this was likely just a curious exploratory bite. But the damage was already done. It was September 26, 2024, and Colleen Monfro, a 68-year-old grandmother and seasoned diver from the United States, was embarking on one of the last planned dives of her 7-week adventure across Indonesia. Colleen's love for diving had spanned decades, a passion she had shared with her husband Mike since their high school days. The two had met as teenagers, drawn together by their mutual love for nature and adventure. Over the years, they had not only explored the world's oceans together, but also owned a successful dive shop where they shared their passion with others. This trip to Indonesia, with its rich marine biodiversity and world-renowned dive sites, was a dream come true for both of them, an opportunity to relive their most cherished memories beneath the surface. That morning, the group of 6 divers who had grown close over the trip shared a cheerful breakfast. Laughter filled the air, and there was a deep sense of connection between them all. As they suited up for the day's dive, the excitement was palpable. The group had bonded over the past several weeks, and the familiarity between them fostered an easygoing, joyful atmosphere. As Colleen and her group descended to a depth of 25 feet, the water surrounding Pulau Rong, part of the breathtaking Alor archipelago, promised vibrant coral reefs and rare marine life, a diver's paradise. For Colleen, each dive was a chance to reconnect with the sense of wonder she'd felt since her teenage years. Confident and experienced, she wasn't easily frightened by the ocean. Yet, beneath the surface of these beautiful waters, there lurked hidden dangers, powerful currents and marine predators like tiger sharks that thrived in the warmth. The dive started with Colleen savoring every moment, knowing this was one of her last dives on this trip. She took in the vibrant underwater world, watching a graceful manta ray glide effortlessly through the coral reefs. The calm waters and serene surroundings made it feel like a perfect final adventure beneath the surface. But after about 30 minutes, the mood of the ocean began to shift. The once gentle currents turned fierce, swirling unpredictably. As the group tried to ascend to safer depths, the currents intensified, making it difficult to stay together. Colleen, in particular, felt the force pulling her away. She struggled to keep close to her husband Mike, but the ocean's grip was too strong. She waved her arms frantically, trying to signal her friends, but the churning water made it hard to be seen. Mike, just feet away, reached out desperately, but Colleen was already being dragged farther from him. Her shouts for help were muffled by the water, vanishing into the vast blue. Mike and the others did their best to fight the current, but within moments, Colleen was gone, pulled beyond their reach. The ocean, indifferent to their efforts, swallowed her whole. Desperation set in as the group frantically searched, their hearts racing. The dive guide quickly signaled for everyone to resurface, knowing the current was too strong to fight. When they emerged, gasping for air, a heavy dread settled over them. Mike's heart pounded as he scanned the water in every direction, calling Colleen's name, but there was no sign of her. The once beautiful waves now felt ominous, crashing violently against the shore. Hours of desperate searching followed, with boats dispatched and local authorities joining the effort. But as the strong current carried Colleen farther beyond reach, hope began to fade. The vast ocean, indifferent and unforgiving, seemed to swallow any trace of her, leaving only the haunting sound of the waves behind. An exhaustive 8-day search unfolded, with the coastline and waters scoured for any sign of Colleen. But the days stretched on, and the ocean offered no clues. On October 3rd, with sea conditions worsening, the search was called off, and a heavy silence fell over the group. But 3 days later, on October 6th, the story took a grim turn. A fisherman off the coast of East Timor encountered a tiger shark in distress. Believing it had swallowed debris or fishing nets, the fisherman brought the shark aboard. Inside the shark's stomach, he found large human remains, pieces of a black wetsuit, and diving gear. Authorities quickly confirmed that these were Colleen's remains. Colleen's last moments remain a mystery, but the discovery of her remains inside the shark is a grim reminder that even in the beautiful waters of Thailand, danger always lurks beneath the surface. Her friends and family were devastated by the loss, none more so than Mike, her husband. Now alone, Mike was left to grapple with the heartbreaking reality that he would never again embark on adventures with his fearless and adventurous partner. When you enter the sea, you can never truly know when your final moments might come. It was a bright, clear morning at Port Beach, a stretch of pristine sand and sparkling water along Perth's coastline. The sun was already warming the sands, promising another day of perfect weather. The water shimmered with golden light as waves rolled lazily onto the shore, where swimmers, surfers, and sunbathers enjoyed the early hours. For Paul Millichip, this was another day of routine, another mile-long swim along the coastline he and his wife had come to call home. Paul was a 57-year-old British expat who had built a life in Australia with his wife. Known for his remarkable fitness, Paul had competed in 6 Ironman competitions. These grueling events involved a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and a marathon run. He and his wife embraced Perth's outdoor lifestyle, regularly running, cycling, and swimming along its coastline. That morning, Paul and his wife arrived at Port Beach as they often did. She briefly joined him in the water but quickly retreated, finding the cold too biting. Paul, undeterred, continued swimming, accustomed to the chill and driven by his disciplined nature. While his wife dried off on shore, Paul swam steadily, his practiced strokes cutting through the water. Unbeknownst to him, a predator lurked beneath the surface. A tiger shark measuring approximately 10 feet patrolled the shallows. The warmer waters and abundance of prey had drawn it closer to shore. This was an opportunistic hunter, capable of taking down dolphins and seals. Millions of years of evolution had made it one of the ocean's most efficient predators, and Paul's silhouette on the surface appeared to it as potential prey. The attack was sudden and devastating. The shark surged upward with tremendous force, its movements precise and instinctual. Paul likely didn't even see it coming. Witnesses later described the shark's sheer size, its dark gray back arching out of the water before dragging Paul beneath the waves. Nearby, 4 teenage boys sat fishing in a small dinghy. Their carefree morning was shattered when they saw the attack unfold just feet from their boat. They watched in horror as the shark broke the surface, its dorsal fin and tail cutting through the water before disappearing with Paul in its jaws. The boys froze momentarily, their laughter replaced by shock and fear. On shore, Paul's wife emerged from the dressing room, scanning the water for his familiar strokes. Instead, she saw the teenagers frantically shouting and waving from their boat. It took a moment for her to grasp what they were saying. A shark attack. Panic spread across the beach as swimmers and surfers rushed to the rocks, scrambling to get out of the water. The teenagers, shaken but quick to act, motored along the shoreline, warning others to get to safety. One of them used his phone to call emergency services while their small boat hovered near the attack site. They were within feet of the shark and could see the massive distance between its dorsal fin and tail, a chilling reminder of its size and power. Emergency crews responded swiftly. A rescue helicopter diverted from a patrol 50 miles away, arriving to assist in the search. 5 water police and sea rescue boats joined the effort, along with lifeguards from a nearby beach. The vastness of the ocean, however, proved relentless. Hours of searching yielded only a single clue: Paul's goggles floating near the site of the attack. After 24 hours, the search was called off. Paul's wife had to deliver the heartbreaking news to their family overseas. Paul, a father of 2 grown children, had vanished in the waters he loved. His wife later thanked the boys in the dinghy for their courage. Though they couldn't save Paul, their quick actions may have prevented further tragedy by alerting others to the danger. The news of the attack spread quickly, leaving a deep impact on the local community. It was the 3rd fatal shark attack in Australian waters that year. Port Beach was closed for the weekend, its sands marked with caution tape and warning signs. By Monday, the beach reopened, though many swimmers stayed away, haunted by the memory of what had happened. The Port Beach Polar Bears, a local swimming group, faced a difficult decision. Some members returned to the water, determined not to let fear keep them away. Others, however, decided to stay on shore, unable to shake the unease brought by the tragedy. Days later, another shark sighting was reported near Port Beach, a shadow circling just 300 feet from shore. A surf life-saving helicopter was dispatched to search the area, but found no trace of the predator. The teenagers who witnessed the attack were later honored with bravery awards for their quick thinking and actions that morning. These awards, given by local authorities, recognized their extraordinary courage during such a traumatic event. Despite the recognition, the boys would forever carry the memory of what they had seen: the shark's immense body, its predatory precision, and the finality of its attack. For Paul's wife, the loss was immeasurable, yet she found some solace in knowing that he had died doing what he loved, immersed in the ocean, a place of freedom and peace for him. Over the past 2 decades, Australia has witnessed a dramatic 30% increase in shark attacks. Yet, the call of the ocean continues to draw countless thrill seekers, many unaware of the hidden dangers beneath the waves. This time in the pristine waters off the Bahamas. Carolyn Deposito, a mother of 3, set out for a peaceful snorkel, unaware that she was swimming in the same waters where just 3 years earlier, a life had been claimed by a brutal shark attack. Would history repeat itself? It was a bright and sunny day on September 6, 2022, when Carolyn Deposito, along with her family, disembarked from the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Harmony of the Seas at Nassau, Bahamas. The group had been eagerly anticipating this snorkeling excursion for weeks, excited to explore the crystal-clear waters off Rose Island. However, what they didn't know was that there was a hidden danger lurking beneath the surface. Carolyn, 58 years old, was a beloved member of her community in Erie, Pennsylvania. Known for her kindness and the warmth she spread among family, friends, and colleagues, she was a central figure at Gannon University where she worked. She and her family had been looking forward to this long-awaited vacation for months, and their excitement had been building since they first boarded the cruise ship at Port Canaveral, Florida. It was a chance to unwind, reconnect, and create new memories together. Little did they know this dream holiday would end in heartbreak. The Harmony of the Seas was one of the largest cruise ships in the world, with its towering water slides, fine dining, zip lines, and breathtaking ocean views. Its passengers could enjoy everything from swimming pools to world-class entertainment. For Caroline and her family, it was the perfect way to experience the Caribbean. On the morning of September 6th, the ship docked just off Nassau, the capital of the Bahamas. The turquoise waters and white sandy beaches promised an unforgettable day of adventure. At around noon, Carolyn and her family boarded a smaller boat, excited for the snorkeling adventure they had booked weeks earlier. Their destination was Rose Island, known for its beautiful coral reefs and vibrant marine life. However, Rose Island also had a darker reputation, one that Carolyn and her family were unaware of. Just 3 years earlier, in 2019, a tragic shark attack had taken place in nearly the same spot. A young American tourist, Jordan Lindsay, was killed by a feeding frenzy of 3 tiger sharks while snorkeling in the area. The sharks attacked Jordan relentlessly, stripping her of an arm and fatally injuring her before she was rescued. Her mother, who had witnessed the horrific scene, was helpless to save her daughter. As the family arrived at Rose Island, the warm sun glinted off the calm water. It was a beautiful day, the kind of day tourists dream about. Carolyn and her family prepared for the water, pulling on their masks and snorkels. The crystal-clear sea beckoned them, and they eagerly entered the water, floating just above the vibrant coral reef. Below the surface, the reef stretched out in every direction, teeming with life. Fish darted in and out of the coral, and sea urchins clung to the rocks. Carolyn dipped her head underwater, mesmerized by the breathtaking underwater world. It was a serene moment, one that would soon turn deadly. Unbeknownst to Carolyn, a bull shark was prowling the area. These sharks, known for their aggression and territorial behavior, are considered one of the most dangerous species in the world. Bull sharks frequent coastal waters like those in the Bahamas, preying on smaller fish and occasionally larger animals. Naturally inquisitive, they often bite humans to determine if they're a suitable source of food. Carolyn, focused on the reef below, had no idea she was about to become the shark's next target. The bull shark had spotted Carolyn, her body silhouetted against the bright sunlight as she floated near the surface. The shark, sensing an opportunity, moved in quickly from below. With a sudden burst of speed, it struck with incredible force, slamming into Carolyn. The impact knocked her head back out of the water, and its powerful jaws clamped down on her torso. The pain was immediate and excruciating. Carolyn's scream shattered the peaceful surroundings. Her family, snorkeling nearby, turned in horror at the commotion. Allison, her daughter, was the first to react, swimming toward Carolyn as the water around her churned and turned red. The shark, its body thrashing violently, released Carolyn after a moment. Struggling to stay afloat, Carolyn gasped for air, her body weakened by the trauma to her left side. The family rushed to her aid, pulling her away from the now murky water as quickly as they could. Together, they managed to lift her onto a nearby tour boat. Once aboard, they worked desperately to apply pressure to her wounds, tearing off pieces of their clothing to try to stem the bleeding. Despite their frantic efforts, it was clear that the bite to her torso was severe and she had already lost a significant amount of blood. The boat's crew called for emergency assistance as they sped toward the nearest shore, Fort Montague on New Providence Island, praying they would make it in time. The family clung to hope, desperately trying to save Carolyn, even as the severity of her injuries became painfully clear. During the boat ride, Carolyn's family fought to keep her alive. Her daughter Allison attempted to resuscitate her, but Carolyn's condition continued to worsen. By the time the boat reached Fort Montague, Carolyn had gone unconscious. The family was devastated when she was pronounced dead upon arrival. Despite the crew's best effort to revive her, the attack had taken everything from them in a matter of minutes. The shark attack in the Bahamas sent shockwaves through the family, who had been so full of excitement just hours before. What was meant to be a joyful family adventure turned into an unimaginable tragedy. Carolyn, known for her warmth and generosity, was suddenly gone, leaving behind a grieving family who would never be the same. It was a cloudy day on the 23rd of June 2005 when the Webster family, Grant, Cherie, and their daughter Alicia, arrived at the island of Malakula, New Zealand aboard their yacht. The weather had turned dreary and a gloomy atmosphere hung over the island. They had come for a much-needed break, eager to spend time with their friends, the Morecambe family, who had joined them on the voyage. But the island greeted them with an unsettling quiet. The water, usually a source of joy and peace for the Websters, now seemed to hold an underlying tension. Alicia Webster, just 7 years old, loved the water. The ocean had always been her playground, and the rhythmic lapping of the waves against the shore had always calmed her. She was a seasoned swimmer, comfortable in the depths of the sea, and this time she couldn't wait to get in. As the yacht anchored near the shore, the children were quick to leap into the water, eager to explore the shoreline. But LePen Tillerson, a local teacher who had lived on the island for several years, saw Alicia from a distance and knew trouble could be waiting. LePen approached the family and offered a warning. He spoke of the sharks that frequented the waters attracted by the fishing boats in the area. The sharks, he explained, had learned to associate this region with easy meals, making it dangerous for those who ventured too far into the ocean. He advised the family to keep their children out of the water, suggesting that there were freshwater areas nearby that would be much safer. LePen's own children, he added, never swam in the ocean. The Websters, unfamiliar with the risks, dismissed his concern. They had seen local children playing in the water and didn't want to ruin their fun. They moved inland for lunch away from the beach. The time away seemed to ease their tension, but once the meal was finished, the pull of the ocean proved too great to resist. Despite LePen's repeated warnings, the family returned to the shore and let their daughter swim again. They convinced themselves he was exaggerating, that the water was safe. After all, local children were still playing in the shallows. How dangerous could it really be? As Alicia waded into the shallows, her parents watched with a sense of ease. She was a confident swimmer and they had raised her in the water. She called out to them, laughing, before announcing that she needed to pee. Without hesitation, she ventured further from the shore, wading past the gentle break of waves where the water deepened. Her parents, more preoccupied with the sight of local children quickly exiting the water, reassured her that it was fine to relieve herself in the ocean. They turned their attention back to the children on the shore, unaware that their carelessness would soon have devastating consequences. It happened so quickly, just a moment's lapse in attention was enough. The children's hurried retreat from the water hadn't registered with the parents' minds, and when they looked back at their daughter, Alicia was no longer where they had last seen her. Panic set in as they scanned the water, their eyes darting over the waves. Then a chilling scream shattered the quiet of the beach. Alicia burst from the water, blood pouring from a horrific wound in her leg. Her father, Grant, rushed forward, heart pounding as he scooped her from the water. She was barely conscious, her body trembling in his arms as he saw the extent of the damage. Her left leg had been severed at the thigh, the bite marks running along her entire side. Blood stained the water around them, turning the shoreline red. Grant's mind raced as he screamed for help. The family's frantic efforts to staunch the bleeding were in vain. The reality of the situation hit them all at once. The shark had already claimed its victim. The water was alive with the scent of blood, and the children, terrified, scrambled away from the shore. With Alicia in his arms, Grant made the split-second decision to take her back to the yacht. They loaded her into a dinghy, paddling toward the mainland with desperation fueling their every stroke. The trip seemed endless. The weight of their daughter's condition pressed down on them, but nothing could stop them from trying to save her. When they finally reached the shore, they flagged down a lorry and begged the driver to take them to the hospital. But it was too late. An hour later, Alicia was pronounced dead on arrival, her life slipping away long before they had reached help. Her parents were left in stunned disbelief, the full weight of their failure settling over them. They had not heeded the warning. They had believed, just for a moment, that they understood the ocean better than a local who had lived there for years. The attack on Alicia came without warning, leaving behind more questions than answers. What had driven the shark to target her? Some wondered if it was the blood from her wound that drew the predator close, while others speculated that the debated theory about human urine attracting sharks might have been a factor, though no conclusive evidence existed. Days after the tragedy, local canoeists reported a large tiger shark patrolling the waters near where Alicia had been attacked. Some even suggested a great white might have been involved, having been spotted just days before. However, with no definitive proof, the cause of the attack remained uncertain. The Websters returned home, their hearts shattered by the loss of their daughter. Alicia's memory, bright and full of life, remained with them, a stark contrast to the tragic and unexplained way she had died. It was a calm November morning in 1991 on the Hawaiian island of Maui, where the sun glimmered on the crystal clear waters, casting a serene glow over the quiet beach at Hilo Point. Marty Morell, a swimmer who had been swimming in these waters every morning of her life, swam elegantly. To Marty, each swim was not merely a rite, it was an opportunity to be with the sea that she was fond of since her childhood. With her husband Dave and their children, she was able to build a perfect life on a beachfront property. But that morning, the tranquil ocean held a darkness just beneath its surface. Martha had been raised in Des Moines and later attended Washington State University, where she met her husband. They got married in 1972 and settled in Hawaii, Maui to be precise. Thanks to Dave's job as the manager of the Pioneer Sugar Mill, they were able to live comfortably, and by 1988 they relocated to a beautiful land at Hilo Point with a lagoon that felt like it was made for them. Marty enjoys swimming and thus became a board member of the Aloha Aquatics Club to ensure children in the society developed the same interest. Life seemed picture perfect. That morning, Marty was not swimming alone. Her friend, Louise Soriso, a doctor from Vancouver, joined her on what they thought was a regular morning swim. Together, they swam out, going further from the reef, giggling as the water washed over them. But as they bobbed about 100 yards from the coast, Louise saw a dark, sleek fin breaking the water. At first, Louise thought it was a playful dolphin, common in the region, but as she lowered her head for a closer look, dread gripped her heart. Instead of a dolphin, a tiger shark emerged, its gray body marked with faded stripes, gliding with the predatory grace of an apex hunter. Louise's breath caught in her throat. This massive creature was no ordinary predator. Before she could scream a warning, the ocean erupted around them. In a flash, the shark attacked, its mouth opening wide as it lunged at Marty right in front of Louise's eyes, biting into her friend's body and holding on tightly. The once calm morning shattered into chaos as Marty fought desperately against the shark's relentless assault. Louise stood frozen, horrified, watching as the predator shook its head violently, tearing into Marty. In a panic, she grabbed a piece of driftwood floating nearby and began striking the shark. But she quickly realized her efforts were futile. The shark's cold, unblinking eyes remained fixed on its prey. Marty's agonized screams filled the air as the creature dragged her beneath the waves. The chaos unfolding in the water didn't go unnoticed at Marty's house. A maid witnessed the tragic scene and dialed emergency services with trembling hands. As the brutal assault continued unabated, Louise faced a dire choice. She had to swim for shore to summon help. Panic coursed through her veins. She reached the shallows and screamed for assistance, her voice a desperate plea echoing through the coastal stillness. A repairman working at Marty's residence heard Louise's frantic cries and bolted outside. He grabbed a paddleboard and plunged into the churning sea, propelling himself toward the horrifying situation. As he approached, a nightmare scene unfolded before him. The dark gray fins and sinuous form of the shark surged above the water, relentlessly tearing into Marty. To his horror, he realized that more sharks had joined the gruesome feast, transforming the water into a frenzy of blood and chaos. Terrified for his own life atop the precarious paddleboard, the repairman made a harrowing decision. He turned and paddled frantically back to the safety of the shore, leaving Marty to her grim fate. Meanwhile, emergency services quickly arrived at the scene. They assessed the chaos in the water and realized that Marty had most likely succumbed to her injuries, given the ferocity of the attack and the presence of multiple sharks. Recognizing the urgent need to retrieve her remains, they prepared for the dangerous task ahead. As they approached, the tiger shark circled Marty's lifeless body, refusing to leave its kill. In a daring maneuver, the responders used their boat to force the predator to retreat. Only then could they finally pull her aboard, bringing a heartbreaking end to the harrowing ordeal. The intensity of the attack left a trail of devastation. Friends and family were heartbroken by the loss of the compassionate 41-year-old woman who devoted herself to her family and had a passion for swimming, which unfortunately cost her her life. Marty had always adhered to safety precautions. She never swam by herself and preferred to experience the ocean during the day in waters she knew well. That day, the sky was bright and clear, and the waters glistened in the sunlight. However, experts suggested that her movements may have inadvertently drawn the shark's attention, an unfortunate instance of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was a clear and warm morning on August 25, 2023 at Lighthouse Beach, located south of Port Macquarie on Australia's New South Wales coast. The sun gleamed over the tranquil water, casting a golden light across the sand. Toby Begg, a 44-year-old father of two, was suited up in his black wetsuit, preparing for his usual Friday morning surf. He carried his bright blue surfboard under his arm, the board smooth and unblemished, contrasting with the warm hues of the beach. The beach was far from empty. 6 other surfers were out in the water enjoying the calm conditions. Toby paddled out, making his way about 500 feet offshore. He positioned himself beyond the breakers, the light morning breeze ruffling his hair as he settled onto his board. He let his legs dangle, the cool ocean water brushing against his skin as he waited for the next wave. To a casual observer, the scene was peaceful, idyllic even. The ocean stretched out endlessly before him, a horizon painted in shades of blue. But beneath the surface, a silent threat moved closer, unseen. A photographer on the beach had been scanning the water with his camera, hoping to capture a pod of dolphins or perhaps an interesting shot of the surfers. When his lens zoomed in on Toby and the others, he unknowingly captured a moment that would come to define the day. In the background of the photograph, there was an odd disturbance in the water, a small patch of turbulence just beneath the surface. It was hard to distinguish at first, but as the photo was later analyzed, it became clear. A massive great white shark over 13 feet in length was moving swiftly through the water just behind Toby. In that fleeting moment, Toby and the other surfer both glanced down, their eyes locking on the patch of churned water. The shark's dark gray shape was unmistakable. With barely a moment to react, the shark struck. Toby barely had time to register the danger before the great white lunged forward, grabbing hold of his legs. The force of the attack was immediate. Its sharp teeth sank deep into his flesh, tearing through muscle and bone. The water erupted into chaos as Toby screamed out in pain, gripping his surfboard with all his strength. His legs were no longer his own. They were in the jaws of a predator determined to secure its meal. Toby fought desperately, thrashing and kicking, but the shark's grip was unyielding. The water around him bubbled violently as the shark thrashed its head from side to side, its powerful body undeterred by his resistance. The bright blue surfboard became a splash of color amidst the violence, the surface punctured and torn by the shark's brutal attack. As the seconds passed, the other surfers raced toward Toby. They could see the battle unfolding from a distance. With each movement, the shark seemed intent on dragging him under, but Toby refused to surrender. His strength was waning, but his will to survive remained unwavering. The shark paused for a moment, giving Toby a brief respite, but only to adjust its grip before attacking again. For what felt like an eternity, the attack continued. Witnesses on the beach stood frozen, unable to help as the struggle unfolded just offshore. The shark's massive form loomed in the water, each attack sending ripples across the surface, marking Toby's blood in the water. Finally, after more than 30 seconds of intense struggle, the shark released its hold and swam off into the depths. Toby, bruised and battered, struggled to stay afloat. His wetsuit was shredded, the blood from his wounds mixing with the salt water. Desperately, he clung to his surfboard, using the last of his strength to paddle toward the shore. Behind him, a blood trail spread across the water, a grim reminder of the vicious encounter. Once on the beach, the extent of Toby's injuries became clear. His legs were a horror of torn flesh. His right leg was severed below the knee, and a deep gash ran from his hip down to his calf. The other leg was severely mauled below the knee, the damage almost beyond comprehension. His wetsuit, once intact, was now nothing more than tattered scraps, stained with red. Lauren Enfield, another surfer who had witnessed the attack, rushed to alert others on the beach. A mother and daughter nearby immediately dialed emergency services. As Toby lay on the sand, his eyes vacant, shock set in. A teenage girl stood nearby, stunned, unable to look away from the gruesome scene. Toby, though conscious, was frozen, his gaze fixed as the reality of his injuries sank in. Somehow, amid the panic, an emergency doctor was on the beach that day. The doctor rushed to Toby's side and helped stabilize him until further assistance arrived. With quick thinking, the group managed to fashion a tourniquet from Toby's surfboard leash, securing it tightly around his leg to slow the bleeding. Sticks were used to form a makeshift splint, keeping his legs straight as they awaited the arrival of paramedics. Within moments, Toby was rushed to Port Macquarie Base Hospital in critical condition. His injuries were severe, but the swift actions of those on the beach had kept him alive. Doctors worked quickly to stabilize him, though it became clear that one of his legs could not be saved. After multiple surgeries, Toby was airlifted to John Hunter Hospital in Newcastle, where surgeons attempted to salvage the remaining leg. By the time this story is being shared, Toby is in stable but serious condition. His recovery will be long, filled with pain and fraught with challenges. His brother-in-law set up a GoFundMe page to support Toby's family as he faces not only a physical recovery but a significant loss of income as the primary breadwinner. The shark responsible for the attack was believed to be a great white based on the bite marks and the description of the attack. Authorities had been aware of sharks in the area, with small drum lines having captured 3 sharks in the area just the day before, including one at Lighthouse Beach. Critics argue that drum lines, while intended to protect swimmers, often have unintended consequences, attracting more predators to the area and harming other marine life in the process. Toby's story sparks a heated debate. Is entering the ocean a daring gamble with nature, or should humans have the right to swim without fear? Some view the sea as the shark's domain, while others place the blame squarely on these apex predators. Near Kewalo Basin off Honolulu's coast, Mike prepared for another surf, surrounded by the gentle hum of beachgoers. Known among friends and family as a devoted father of 2 and a lifelong ocean lover, he had spent decades navigating Hawaii's waters, finding peace and thrill in the waves that felt like home. Surfing wasn't just a pastime for Mike, it was a way of life, an essential part of his weekend rhythm. That morning, the beach was comfortably busy, its calm yet lively energy giving the water an air of both safety and excitement. The sunlight danced over the surface, casting patterns on the seabed as Mike paddled out. As he positioned himself, scanning the horizon for the perfect wave, everything seemed routine. In a single instant, his world shifted. As he caught a wave, an abrupt, powerful tug nearly threw him from his board. He tightened his grip, attempting to balance, but then felt a sharp, even stronger pull, jerking him off the board completely. Nearby surfers glanced over, startled as they saw Mike pulled beneath the surface. Mike disappeared underwater, now locked in a life-or-death struggle with a predator. A 7-foot tiger shark had latched onto his leg, and its powerful jaws held him fast, pulling him deeper. The water around them churned with movement as Mike kicked and punched, each strike stirring up bubbles and sand. Other surfers watched as the water around Mike grew turbulent, his legs thrashing and his arms striking against the creature. Still, no matter how much he struggled, the shark didn't release its grip. Just as he managed to break the surface for a moment, he gasped, taking in a mouthful of air before the shark dragged him down again. He barely had a chance to stay above water, and each time he resurfaced, it was only for a quick, desperate breath. His leg remained tightly caught in the shark's grip, and each kick seemed to make no difference. The nearby surfers kept their eyes fixed on the scene, the stillness of the ocean around them amplifying the violence unfolding just beneath the waves. With each attempt to pull himself away, Mike's movements grew more forceful. Underwater, he wrapped his arm around the shark's rough body, gripping it and squeezing it in a final effort to get free. The two twisted and turned in the water, a frenzied blend of limbs and fins. In the swirling struggle, the water grew murky with sand and blood, creating a cloud that obscured the view from the surface. Then, after a few more tense seconds, the shark finally released its grip and swam away. Mike shot to the surface, gasping and gulping in the fresh air. His face was pale, his body weakened from the fight, but he was free. As he floated in the water, catching his breath, he spotted the other surfers paddling quickly toward him. Within moments, they reached his side, pulling him up onto a nearby surfboard and positioning him securely. One surfer held the board still while the others began paddling toward shore, the group working together to get him to safety as fast as possible. As they moved forward, Mike motioned for them to stop. He looked down at his leg and saw the extent of the injury. A mangled, bloody wound with flesh torn open and blood flowing out into the water around him. The sight alone was enough to prompt immediate action. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, his friends quickly moved closer, and one of them reached for an ankle cord. Working together, they fashioned the cord into a makeshift tourniquet, tying it tightly above the wound to slow the bleeding. The cord was secured in place and the flow of blood visibly slowed, providing some relief in the tense situation. With the worst of the bleeding controlled, the group continued paddling, catching each wave to move faster toward the shore. Mike lay flat on the surfboard, his friends positioned around him, each one focused on the journey ahead. The water was calm, and though each bump and shift of the board sent a jolt through Mike's injured leg, the shore slowly drew closer. The surfers stayed focused, keeping an even pace as they guided the board toward shore, every stroke bringing them closer to safety. As they neared the beach, a small crowd began to gather, drawn by the sight of the surfers escorting Mike back to the shore. Onlookers quickly grasped the severity of the situation, some rushing to alert medical personnel while others moved closer, offering to help. Once they reached the sand, the surfers carefully lifted Mike from the board, carrying him onto dry ground. Emergency responders arrived and he was swiftly loaded into an ambulance. At the hospital, surgeons assessed Mike's injuries. Despite their extensive efforts to repair the damage, his foot could not be saved. The shark's grip had been too strong and the wounds were too severe. And yet, Mike had survived. His experience and the quick actions of his friends had given him a chance to fight through those desperate moments. Mike spoke from his hospital bed, recalling the intense moments of the attack. He described feeling the shark clamp down on his leg, saying, "I could just feel the strength and power of it." He fought hard, punching the shark repeatedly, but when that didn't work, he wrapped his arm and leg around its body, trying to find any weak point. When he finally struck the gills, the shark let go, he explained, crediting his survival to his quick instincts and determination. Reflecting on the rescue, Mike expressed deep gratitude for his friends, saying, "Thank God for my friends who saved my life." Their fast thinking with a tourniquet he knew had kept him from bleeding out. After 4 decades of surfing, Mike had always respected the ocean's power, but this experience had left him with an even deeper sense of awe and caution. In the following days, Mike's story became one of survival, a tale of teamwork and quick thinking under pressure. The surfers who had paddled to his side were credited with saving his life, their actions quick and their support stable in a moment of mayhem. Though he returned from the encounter changed, he remained grateful, a sign of the strength in both human instinct and friendship. On January 17, 1971, the weather that day was hot and humid, following several nights of summer storms that had disturbed the usual clarity of the ocean. Seeking relief from the relentless heat, the Dalworths were eager to cool off in the waters they loved. They had a tradition of weekend boat outings, and despite being aware of the lurking dangers, they enjoyed the thrill of being in the ocean. They boarded their small motorboat, excitement rippling through the air as they set out for their usual weekend adventure. The scorching heat made the ocean water even more inviting. As they cruised along the coastline, they searched for the perfect secluded spot to dive in, finally settling on a calm area near a towering cliff. Unbeknownst to them, this would be their last dive together. Jack, always the adventurous one, was the first to jump in, splashing around and calling for Laura to join him. The water looked inviting despite its murky appearance, remnants of the storm's aftermath still swirling below the surface. Michael remained aboard, keeping a watchful eye on them as they swam. As Jack and Laura swam, the ocean seemed alive with movement. They laughed and splashed, enjoying the warm water. However, Michael noticed something alarming, a dark fin slicing through the water. His heart raced as he recognized it as a great white shark, drawn to the area possibly by the storm and the murky conditions. Michael shouted a warning to his family, but the urgency of the situation unfolded too quickly. The great white, measuring approximately 16 feet in length, surged forward with terrifying speed. It struck Jack first, clamping its powerful jaws down on his leg. The water quickly turned red as blood clouded around him. Jack's screams echoed across the water, alerting Laura to the immediate danger. Without hesitation, Michael dove into the water, adrenaline pushing him forward as he swam toward his son. Laura, who was already nearby, moved to assist Jack but held back when she noticed the blood spreading. Michael reached Jack and grabbed him, attempting to pull him back to the boat, but the shark circled them, its predatory instincts heightened by the blood in the water. In a horrifying moment, the shark turned its attention to Laura, lunging forward and sinking its teeth into her upper thigh, ripping out a large piece of flesh as blood poured into the water. Laura let out a cry, but it was brief as the shark's bite tore through her body. After the initial attack, the shark swam away, leaving a moment of uncertainty. Michael, in shock, attempted to drag Jack back to the boat. Jack was conscious but struggling against the pain. As Michael pulled Jack closer, the shark returned, its aggression amplified by the smell of blood. This time, the great white turned its attention to Michael. With terrifying speed, it clamped down on his torso, forcing him to let go of Jack. Helpless and weakened by blood loss, Jack drifted away as the shark pulled Michael underwater. The attack was brutal and swift. The sea turned red, and within moments, the shark vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only chaos and fear. Nearby fishermen, alerted by the sudden commotion, rushed toward the scene. As they approached, they saw Michael's body floating, his blood mixing with the water around him. They quickly pulled him aboard their boat, his injuries severe and his body barely clinging to life. His condition was critical, but there was no time to hesitate. As the fishermen scanned the water for any other survivors, they spotted Laura drifting nearby. She was alive but barely conscious, weak from the ordeal. They carefully lifted her onto the boat, her breath shallow and faint, but Jack was nowhere to be found. They searched frantically, calling his name, but the sea had already swallowed him. He was presumed drowned, his body lost to the depths. Knowing every second counted, the fishermen raced back to the shore, pushing their boat to its limits. When they arrived at the dock, emergency services were waiting to rush Michael and Laura to Port Lincoln Hospital. Laura's condition was critical, and despite immediate efforts to save her, she passed away shortly after arriving. Michael, suffering from severe blood loss, was taken into surgery, but a few hours later, he too succumbed to his injuries. Jack's body was never recovered, and the tragedy left the community devastated. In the days following the attack, an investigation was launched to determine what had happened. Experts questioned whether a single great white shark had been responsible, or if multiple sharks were involved. The attack's ferocity and the unusual behavior left many puzzled, as nothing like this had been recorded before. The Dalworth family's devastating loss stands as a stark reminder that the ocean belongs to its predators, and every venture into its depths comes with inherent risks. It was July 15, 2017, and the brilliant sun rose over Makati Bay, illuminating the Red Sea in bright light. The smell of the sea mingled with the sounds of joy in people's voices, children and their parents enjoying their time freely on a sunny summer day. For 28-year-old Ruben Morales, a professional swimmer, this was the perfect day to reconnect with the ocean. Ruben had traveled the world since finishing college, eager to embrace new experiences and adventures. Known for his speed and endurance in the water, he had won several regional swimming competitions, making him feel confident and at home in any aquatic environment. This trip to Egypt held special significance as he reunited after years with his college friend Darius, who lived by the Red Sea and was excited to show him the beauty of the area. Having woken up very early to prepare a hearty breakfast filled with jokes and camaraderie, Ruben and Darius decided to head out to the beach, where the water sparkled like diamonds. Ruben's heart raced with excitement as he stripped down to his swimsuit, unaware of the terrifying fate that would soon await him in the waters. They swam with exuberance, their laughter mingling with the sounds of the sea. Tropical fish darted among the corals, and Ruben felt a rush of exhilaration with every stroke, the water embracing him like a long-lost friend. Usually, the Red Sea was safe, but on this day, a 10-foot mako shark was roaming the waters. Drawn to the warm temperatures of the Red Sea, which hovered around 60 degrees Fahrenheit, the shark was searching for prey. Unfortunately for Darius and Ruben, the murky conditions made it difficult for them to see the approaching danger. They enjoyed swimming while reminiscing about the experiences they had shared since the last time they had seen each other, which was quite a while ago. After a while, they paused in the water to share a laugh, their heads bobbing above the surface. The sun glared down and the beach buzzed with life. Looking around, Ruben noticed a dark silhouette moving beneath the surface. It was difficult to see, but he immediately mentioned it to Darius, who knew these waters well. As Darius turned to look where Ruben pointed, the shape disappeared from view. Having lived here for years, Darius assured Ruben that it was probably just a big fish or some seaweed. They agreed to return to the coast, since they had been in the water for a while. Although Darius trusted his instincts, they remained cautious about the dark shape, but didn't feel the need to alarm anyone. Just as they turned their backs to swim toward the shore, the quiet was suddenly broken. The surface erupted as the mako shark shot up from the depths, biting down hard on Ruben's right leg. Blood erupted into the water as the shark clamped its powerful jaws around him, dragging him beneath the surface. Before he could even scream, everything went dark. Pain surged through his body as the shark pulled him down, the water closing over his head. Fear coursed through him as he fought to escape the grip of the creature. Darius, momentarily stunned, sprang into action, swimming frantically toward Ruben with every ounce of strength he had left. The ocean felt alive with terror as he reached out, desperately trying to save his friend. He started punching the shark, his fist landing squarely on the animal's tough hide, but the creature wouldn't let go. Ruben fought back with everything he had. He swung his left hand in wild desperation, not even knowing where his strikes were landing, but driven by the primal instinct to survive. Just as he was trying to fend off the shark, it lunged forward again, biting down on his left hand and severing it. Blood swirled around him as he struggled against the powerful creature, fighting for his life. After this second horrific bite, the shark released him and vanished quickly into the depths, perhaps startled by Darius's punches or realizing that Ruben wasn't its usual prey. Darius caught Ruben and dragged him to the surface. Gasping for air, Ruben's mind spun as they struggled against the waves, blood staining the water around them. A nearby beachgoer, brave enough to help as others watched and screamed, rushed to join Darius in their fight against the current. Together they pulled Ruben toward the shore, the beach drawing nearer yet feeling very distant. With each stroke, Ruben rapidly lost blood, the burning ache in his leg intensifying with every moment. Finally, they stumbled onto the sand and chaos erupted. More bystanders rushed to the beach with wide eyes, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Lifeguards quickly sprang into action, rushing to Ruben's side. They applied pressure to stop the bleeding from his right leg where the shark had bitten down hard, but the sight of his severed left hand was horrific. Eventually, the ambulance arrived and Ruben was transported to Hurghada Hospital, where the medical team immediately went to work on him. He received treatment for his severe injuries, including a deep bite wound on his right leg, and remarkably, he survived. However, due to the severity of the damage, his left hand had to be amputated. In the days that followed, an investigation was launched into the shark attack, and the beach was closed for several weeks. The incident made headlines, dominating local newspapers and sparking widespread concern among beachgoers and residents alike. Ruben was grateful to be alive, though many would expect him never to enter the water again. Yet his passion for swimming never died. After months of recovery and overcoming his fears, he cautiously returned to the ocean. Though his love for the water remained strong, he now swam with a more watchful eye, always aware of the dangers lurking beneath the surface. It was a clear, warm December afternoon in 1998. Boa Viagem Beach, one of Recife's most iconic destinations, stretched out in a golden expanse along the Atlantic coast. The vibrant atmosphere was unmistakable. Families laughing under beach umbrellas, vendors calling out to passers-by, and the gentle ebb and flow of the ocean in the background. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden sheen on the water, making the beach seem like an idyllic paradise. Yet beneath its inviting surface, something far more dangerous waited, unseen and silent. Ana Paula Mendez, 19 years, had always been drawn to nature. A second-year environmental science student, she had spent most of her life studying the intricate balance of ecosystems and biodiversity. Adventure was in her blood, and wherever she went, she carried the energy of someone who found joy in the smallest discoveries. Alongside her was her cousin, Sofia Araujo, 18 years old, a gentle soul with a love for helping others. Sofia had just graduated high school, preparing to study nursing. The two were as different as night and day. Ana, bold and fearless, and Sofia, more reserved but deeply compassionate. Despite their differences, they shared a bond that only family could create. It was on this trip to Recife that they would create memories to last a lifetime. Memories that would forever be overshadowed by a tragedy neither of them could have anticipated. The warm sand beneath their feet felt perfect as they set up their spot near the lifeguard tower. The beach was crowded, filled with tourists and locals alike, enjoying the final hours of daylight before the evening would usher them to their next destinations. Ana had been looking forward to the ocean, and Sofia, though more cautious, trusted her cousin's enthusiasm. After spending the morning exploring Recife, the girls were eager to enjoy the calm of the beach before they had to leave for their flight back to Sao Paulo. They took their time walking along the shore, talking about their trip and their future plans. Brazil's coastline was renowned for its rich marine life, but decades of human development had disrupted the delicate balance of these ecosystems. The construction of Sape Port in the 1980s, located in the state of Pernambuco, significantly altered the natural flow of currents and the behavior of marine species in the area. This massive project destroyed mangroves and seagrass beds, crucial habitats for many marine species, and forced predators like sharks to adapt to the changing environment. The disruption pushed some shark species, particularly bull sharks, closer to the shore. Bull sharks are known for their territorial nature and aggression, thriving in both salt and brackish waters. The altered currents and reduced availability of prey drove them to hunt closer to the coastline, where human activity increased their encounters with swimmers and surfers. By 1998, Recife had already earned a reputation for shark attacks, with at least 20 recorded incidents since the early 1990s. Of these attacks, nearly half were fatal, sparking growing concern among locals and marine biologists. Unaware of this grim reputation, the girls waded into the water, their feet sinking into the soft sand beneath the waves. The ocean seemed perfect, gentle and clear, its calm surface betraying nothing of the danger it concealed. They ventured deeper, the water rising to their chests, and laughed as they felt the rhythmic pull of the tide. After spending some time in the water, the tide was shifting, making it harder to see beneath the surface. Sediment from the seabed began to swirl, stirred by the recent rains that had loosened sand and debris. Within minutes, the once crystal clear water turned murky. Anna glanced at the water around them, noticing how the vibrant blue had become cloudy. She hesitated for a moment but brushed it off, thinking it was just part of the tide's natural rhythm. Sophia, still enjoying the waves, playfully splashed water, unfazed by the subtle change. They lingered in now murkier water, talking and laughing, unaware of the danger lurking below. Bull sharks are opportunistic hunters, known for thriving in murky waters where their prey is less likely to detect them. This heightened ability to hunt in reduced visibility makes them particularly dangerous in conditions like those now forming around Anna and Sophia. When they felt that they had swum enough, Anna suggested they head back to shore. Sophia nodded and they turned toward the beach, the sunlight glinting off the waves ahead. It was then that something caught Anna's eye, a dark shape moving swiftly beneath the surface. She stopped in her tracks, her heart skipping a beat, but dismissed it as a trick of the light or a drifting shadow. She called out to Sophia, who was still a few feet away, her face calm as she floated in the water, but it was too late. The shark had already made its way towards Sophia, moving with terrifying speed beneath the murky waves. Sophia screamed, her voice muffled by the water as a bull shark, nearly 8 feet long, clamped its powerful jaws around her leg, dragging her under. Blood swirled in the water as Sophia thrashed in a desperate attempt to free herself. Anna turned, horror flooding her senses as she saw her cousin disappear beneath the waves, her body briefly surfacing before vanishing again. Instinctively, Anna swam toward her, reaching out in a futile attempt to pull her to safety. But the shark was relentless. It released Sophia only to strike again, its teeth sinking into her thigh with terrifying force. Anna was in a panic now as she grasped Sophia's arm, trying to pull her away. But the predator wasn't done. It turned its attention to Anna, locking its jaws around her arm. Anna screamed as the pressure crushed her bones. Her body went limp in the shark's grip, but the predator remained undeterred. The pain was overwhelming, and Anna slipped in and out of consciousness. Lifeguards rushed to the scene, their whistles piercing through the chaos. At the sound of the commotion, the shark finally released its hold and retreated. A rescue board was quickly placed under Anna, and she was hauled to safety, her blood staining the ocean around her. Sophia, however, was not so lucky. Lifeguards reached her moments later. The injuries were too severe. She had sustained massive blood loss from the shark's bite to her thigh. Her body was carried back to the shore, where it was confirmed she did not survive the attack. Anna was rushed to a hospital where surgeons worked frantically to save her life. Her left arm was amputated below the elbow, and although she would survive, no medical intervention could undo the emotional toll of the attack or the loss of her beloved cousin. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the beach was closed indefinitely as authorities investigated the attack and worked to implement stricter safety measures. Shark nets were placed along the shoreline in an effort to prevent future attacks, But despite these precautions, the bull shark responsible for the incident was never found. Locals mourned the loss of Sophia, and the once bustling shoreline became eerily silent, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked beneath the waves. It was December 24th, the day before Christmas, and the coastal town of Cayucos, California was calm under the soft winter sun. While the rest of the country braced for the cold, this part of California enjoyed mild temperatures, with the daytime hovering around 60 to 70 degrees. It was the perfect day for Thomas Abraham Butterfield to indulge in his favorite pastime, being out on the ocean. He wasn't a hardcore surfer, but his love for the water was undeniable, a passion kindled during his childhood in Alaska. Every Christmas, Thomas made the trip from Sacramento to Cayucos to visit his mother, Maria Butterfield. At 42, he lived a busy life in the state's capital, but nothing compared to the joy of returning to the ocean, the place where he felt most alive. His love for the sea had started young, helping fishermen in his Alaskan hometown, even in the freezing winters. Now, he couldn't wait for the holiday break, where he'd spend 2 weeks on the beach, soaking in the ocean breeze. On that Christmas Eve morning, Thomas decided to head out to Morro Bay, just a short drive from his mother's house. He grabbed his boogie board instead of his surfboard, looking forward to a relaxing time in the water. The plan for the day was simple: a few hours on the waves before heading to church with his mother, followed by a quiet evening at home. Maria knew this routine well. She'd grown used to seeing her son slip away to the ocean whenever he could, but this year it felt even more important. Her youngest son, Ben, couldn't make it for Christmas, and Thomas had a special gift planned to lift her spirits. Unbeknownst to her, it would be the last gift Thomas would ever plan to give. By 8:30 a.m., Thomas was out in the water at Morro Bay. The day was peaceful, and only a few people shared the ocean with him: a young couple and 2 older surfers, all keeping their distance from one another. The sun was bright, the waves gentle, and Thomas was content to ride them casually, enjoying the quiet. But beneath the surface, something far more dangerous lurked. A 15-foot great white shark patrolled the waters, unnoticed by anyone. It had been waiting patiently for its next opportunity to strike. Thomas, floating far from shore on his brightly colored boogie board, appeared small in the vast ocean, an easy target. To the predator, size didn't matter. A meal was a meal. Without warning, the shark attacked. In a sudden burst of speed, it lunged from below, its massive jaws clamping down on Thomas's shoulder. The force of the bite dragged Thomas and his board beneath the surface. The water, once calm, now churned as the predator tore through muscle and bone. Thomas struggled desperately, his body reacting on pure instinct. His first goal was to get free. In an incredible feat of strength, he managed to rip himself out of the shark's grip, surfacing just long enough to gasp for air. But before he could call for help, the shark struck again, this time aiming for his head. Its jaws closed around his skull, the immense pressure crushing down. Thomas fought back with everything he had, his years of physical labor giving him an edge. He punched and kicked at the shark, his hands clawing at its leathery skin. In one final desperate act, Thomas managed to gouge at the shark's eye, his finger sinking into the soft tissue. The predator, now half blind and in pain, retreated, but the damage was done. The first bite had severed a major artery in Tom's neck, and though he'd been fighting for his life, he had been bleeding out all along. Weak and losing consciousness, Thomas's body could no longer stay afloat. He slipped beneath the surface once more. By the time a nearby surfer noticed him and paddled over, it was too late. The man pulled Thomas's lifeless body to shore, but the injuries were too severe. Thomas had stopped breathing long before any help could arrive. For the small community of Cayucos, the tragedy was a devastating reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the ocean's surface. Authorities identified the attacker by the tooth left embedded in Thomas's skull, a great white shark, a creature as feared as it was respected. The shark was never seen again, leaving behind only shock and sorrow. 2 months later, Maria Butterfield, still grieving the loss of her son, found the courage to open the Christmas gift Thomas had bought for her. Inside the carefully wrapped box was a porcelain figure of the Virgin Mary holding baby Jesus, a small candle holder at her feet. Since that day, Maria has kept a candle burning every night, a quiet tribute to her son, whose love for the ocean had brought him both peace and, tragically, his end. It was June 4th, 2005 when the sun rose over False Bay at Millers Point, South Africa, illuminating the tranquil waters and rugged coastline. This picturesque region, known for its stunning views and vibrant marine life, attracted countless divers and fishermen. However, beneath its inviting surface lay hidden dangers. False Bay is renowned for its population of great white sharks, making it a prime location for both adventure and peril. Henry Murray, a 22-year-old student from Durbanville, was one of those drawn irresistibly to the sea. On that fateful day, he and his best friend Pete Van Niekerk set out with plans for a skin diving and spearfishing trip. Both avid outdoor enthusiasts, they understood the risks that came with the ocean's allure, but were undeterred. Before diving into their adventure, they made their way to the Black Marlin restaurant, where they could enjoy a scenic lunch overlooking the sparkling water. The day had begun beautifully, with clear skies and a gentle swell rolling in from the ocean. Families dotted the nearby beach, soaking up the sun, while surfers carved through the waves. It was a seemingly perfect day, and the shimmer of the midday sun only added to the anticipation of what lay ahead. After finishing their meal, the two friends donned their diving gear and waded into the water around 2 p.m. With the tide low, they swam about 500 feet from the shore, where the ocean welcomed them with open arms. The water was calm, visibility clear, and schools of fish darted around them. It was a day that promised excitement and exploration. Henry's goal was to catch a galleon, a fish known for its vivid colors and challenging hunt. He dove deeper, his spear gun ready in hand. Just as he spotted a galleon in the distance, he suddenly noticed a large shape moving. Realizing the danger, he quickly shouted to Pete, "A great white is here! We have to get out!" Despite the clear visibility, seeing the 16-foot great white shark wasn't enough to save Henry's life. As they hurriedly swam toward the shore, the great white shark unexpectedly emerged from the water beside them, creating chaos as it launched itself into the air, trying to intercept them. The shark, attracted by their movements, surged toward them with alarming speed. Panic set in as the creature breached the surface, its powerful body propelling it into the air. Water splashed around them as they instinctively began swimming toward the shore. Henry's breath quickened as he glanced back, realizing the shark was circling them, drawn by their frantic movements. Chaos erupted in the water as Henry and Pete struggled to swim back. The predator was relentless, appearing and disappearing beneath the surface in a terrifying display of agility. As they pushed harder to reach safety, the shark suddenly lunged, its massive jaws snapping just inches from Henry. He raised his spear gun, attempting to fend off the attack, but the shark was unfazed. It swam underneath him, grabbing hold of Henry with a swift, powerful bite. In that horrifying moment, the world above erupted into chaos. Pete watched in horror as Henry's body was dragged beneath the surface, his arms flailing helplessly. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Pete dove into the water, desperately trying to reach his friend. The ocean, once a place of adventure, had transformed into a nightmare. The predator had claimed its prize. Pete swam with urgency, but it was too late. The shark disappeared into the depths, taking Henry with it. Overwhelmed by fear and confusion, Pete surfaced and swam frantically back to shore. The beach loomed ahead, but the distance felt like an eternity. Once on land, he sprinted toward the nearest fisherman, shouting for help. The urgency of the situation spread quickly, and local fishermen jumped into their boats, engines roaring as they set off into the water. As darkness began to fall, the search for Henry became increasingly grim. Boats continued to comb the waters, but the ocean remained silent. Hours passed with no results. In the early evening, local authorities informed Henry's family of the tragic reality. The search for him would be suspended, a sobering acknowledgement of the ocean's unpredictability. The next day, reports emerged of a shark sighted off the coast of Simonstown, identifiable by the spear still lodged in its side. As divers resumed their search, pieces of Henry's equipment began to wash ashore: a broken spear gun, rubber fins, and a section of his wetsuit. The ocean had claimed him, leaving behind only remnants of his presence. In the weeks after Henry Murray's death, his story spread beyond Miller's Point, reminding everyone of nature's unpredictability. Fishermen and divers shared stories highlighting the need to be careful during their adventures. The community gathered to remember Henry, honoring his spirit and recognizing the importance of balancing exploration with safety. It was early morning in September 2022 at Plettenberg Bay, South Africa, and the beach was quiet, the sky painted in soft shades of dawn. The Western Cape's coastline looked picture perfect. Turquoise waves rolled gently to shore, and soft sand stretched along the waterfront, still untouched by crowds. For many South Africans, it was a weekend of rest and celebration for Heritage Day, and families flocked to the beaches to enjoy the holiday. Among them were Kimon Basogno, her partner Diego Messi, and their 5-year-old daughter Luna. Kimon and Diego had driven 300 miles from Cape Town to enjoy a well-deserved vacation. The couple had built a life together, running a thriving Italian restaurant, Fernando's Pizza and Takeaway, in Cape Town. The restaurant had weathered challenges, even surviving the COVID pandemic. With their business stable and thriving again, they had finally taken time to relax and recharge. Their destination was the luxurious Beacon Island Hotel, nestled on the scenic garden route. The hotel was surrounded by pristine sandy beaches, clear waters, and dramatic coastal scenery. On that September morning, the family left their hotel room just after 7 a.m., making their way to the sand before the beach filled up with other holiday goers. Luna played in the sand with Diego, while Kimon ventured into the water for a refreshing morning swim, savoring the peacefulness of the early hour. While Plettenberg Bay looked calm, it was also known for its history of shark encounters. Just a year before, a local man, Bruce Wolof, lost his life after a great white shark attacked him while swimming at a nearby sanctuary beach. Following this fatality, local officials closed beaches temporarily as multiple great white sharks had been sighted in the days surrounding the incident. These waters had seen other incidents, like the attack on surfer Dylan Reddering in 2015, which left him with severe leg injuries. Despite an expanded push for safety measures, tourists and locals continue to be drawn to Plettenberg Bay, charmed by its beauty, often unaware of the hidden risks that come with swimming in these wild waters. Further offshore, beneath the waves and beyond Kimon's notice, a shadow was gliding along the shoreline. A 13-foot great white shark was patrolling the coast, its shape barely visible under the surface. The annual sardine run had ended only a month before, leaving many sharks lingering along the coast where prey had recently been plentiful. Though the water seemed calm, the shark was on the hunt. Kimon waded waist deep, close enough to see Luna and Diego playing on the shore. She was only a few yards from them, the water around her clear and shallow. A few other swimmers splashed nearby, enjoying the cool, calm sea. Then, without warning, the shark altered its course, now angling toward the shoreline. It spotted Kimmin in the shallows, her movements catching its attention. Hidden just beneath the water, the predator closed in silently, its powerful tail propelling it forward with terrifying precision. Then, in a split second, it struck. The great white surged forward, breaking through the arc of a wave. In one powerful motion, its massive jaws clamped down around Kimmin's waist, pulling her off her feet in an instant. The impact was like a force of nature, dragging her down with such strength that it left her defenseless. The water around her erupted in a frenzy of foam and blood as the shark thrashed, its jaws locked around her midsection. People on the beach stared, frozen, as they watched the water churn, Kimmin's body momentarily visible through splashes of red as the great white's tail slapped against the waves. Nearby swimmers screamed, scrambling toward the shore in a blind panic, each fearing the shark might turn on them next. Diego and Luna, only yards away, could do nothing but watch, stunned by the horrific sight unfolding just a few steps from where they stood. The shark's jaws had torn through muscle and arteries in a single devastating bite, leaving Kimmin motionless in the water, surrounded by a pool of blood. Her body, still in the shark's grasp, was tossed briefly above the surface as the predator circled before vanishing beneath the waves. The beach fell into silence as rescuers arrived, their lifeboats cutting through the red-stained waves. Onlookers, still processing the horror, could only watch, understanding the tragic finality as Kimmin's body was carefully lifted from the water. Diego held Luna close, their eyes fixed on the spot where their family had been shattered in an instant, realizing that Kimmin was dead. News of Kimmin's death spread quickly, reaching Cape Town and the community that knew her as a devoted mother, partner, and a beacon of kindness. She had a warm and caring nature, always putting others before herself. Each week she volunteered at the OBS Pasta Kitchen, offering warm meals and a constant presence to those in need. To many, her compassion was a lifeline, her spirit one of rare generosity. In the days that followed, the waters at Plettenberg Bay grew calm again, but for Diego, Luna, and the friends she left behind, the waves would always carry the memory of her. Kimmin had entered the ocean in a moment of joy, in a place where she felt most alive. Now, the sea was both a beautiful memory of her spirit and a force that had taken her away without warning, changing everything in an instant. On August 12, 1963, in Rio Haina, Dominican Republic, 16-year-old best friends Manuel Garcia, Carlos Diaz, and Raymond Perez sought relief from the oppressing summer heat. Their destination, the breakwater near the port, a familiar spot where they had spent countless hours swimming and diving. But this day would be different. Beneath the inviting waves, something horrifying lurked. The Dominican Republic, known for its stunning coastlines and tropical beauty, is a place where the sea is woven into daily life. The waters surrounding this Caribbean nation are home to diverse marine life, from vibrant coral reefs to deadly predators. Among them are great white sharks, apex predators capable of turning serene waters into chaotic bloodbaths in a matter of seconds. These sharks, perfected by millions of years of evolution, are built for stealth, speed, and lethal precision. Typically, they hunt alone, ambushing their prey with quick, brutal efficiency. But in rare instances, these predators exhibit extraordinary behavior, hunting in groups. Recent research reveals that great whites occasionally coordinate to increase their chances of a successful kill. The waters near Rio Haina were no stranger to these apex predators, though sightings near the port were rare. 16-year-old Raymond Perez and his best friends Manuel Garcia and Carlos Diaz were inseparable. Growing up in Rio Jaina, they spent countless days exploring their coastal town. On that sweltering summer day, the boys ventured into the breakwater at Port Rio Jaina. Built to shield the port from rough seas, the breakwater was a tempting yet treacherous playground, with its jagged rocks and slippery surfaces. That afternoon, the sea was deceptively calm, and the trio dove into the inviting water, laughing as they challenged each other to underwater games. But the weather shifted abruptly. Dark clouds rolled in over the port, transforming the once placid sea into a chaotic and unpredictable force. The boys, startled by the sudden change, scrambled to climb onto the breakwater, hoping to find safety on the jagged rocks. Waves surged with growing intensity, crashing against the breakwater and making it nearly impossible to keep their footing. A sudden, powerful swell slammed into them, knocking Manuel and Carlos off the rocks and into the churning waters below. Raymond, clinging desperately to the slippery surface, managed to pull himself out of the water just in time. From his precarious position, he could only watch helplessly as the waves carried his two friends farther out to sea. Manuel and Carlos were helpless against the raging current, their bodies battered by the relentless waves. The sharp, jagged edges of the breakwater had torn into their flesh. Manuel's upper right thigh was gashed deeply from being thrown against the rocks, while Carlos's arm was severely cut open after scraping against the sharp barnacles clinging to the submerged stones. Their wounds bled profusely, the crimson streaks swirling into the turbulent water. Unseen beneath the waves, a predator stirred. Great white sharks, drawn by the faintest scent of blood, began converging on the struggling boys. Raymond watched in horror as his friends flailed against the waves. He clung to the jagged rocks, powerless to help, as the current dragged them farther from shore. The laughter of moments ago had turned to desperate cries, barely audible over the roaring surf. What began as an ordinary day had become a nightmare. Little did the boys know, drowning was now the least of their worries. The first shadow appeared silently beneath the surface, then another and another. 8 great white sharks had picked up the scent of blood, each one closing in with lethal intent. These creatures, massive and powerful, were the ocean's ultimate predators. What happened next would defy belief. Manuel felt the first jarring bump against his hip. The impact nearly pulled him under, and as he turned, he saw the fins slicing through the waves. Another violent hit followed, launching him upward. The water erupted as a great white lunged, its massive jaws clamping onto Manuel's torso. Blood sprayed into the sea, fueling the frenzy as more sharks surged forward. Carlos swam toward his friend, but a second shark struck, tearing into Manuel mid-air before dragging him below. The water turned red as the predators thrashed, their tails slapping the waves in a violent spectacle. Within moments, Manuel disappeared beneath the surface. Carlos, now alone, desperately turned toward the shore, adrenaline propelling him forward. The fins multiplied, surrounding him as the sharks closed in. Nearby, a small boat docked at the port sprang into action, its driver spotting the boys struggle and racing toward him, yelling and pointing in desperation. Just as hope seemed within reach, a massive shadow emerged from the depths. A shark lunged, its jaws clamping onto Carlos's right arm and shaking violently. His screams cut through the chaos, but another shark struck from the other side, pulling him under. The boat arrived moments too late. The sea continued to churn violently, waves crashing against the breakwater and sending spray high into the air. The predators sank beneath the stormy surface, their dark shapes disappearing into the depths. The blood streaks were quickly swallowed by the relentless waves, leaving no sign of what had transpired except for the horrified witnesses on shore. The storm raged on, seemingly determined to erase the devastation it had just unleashed. Raymond was eventually rescued from the breakwater, his trembling hands gripping the jagged rocks until help arrived. Though physically unharmed, the terror etched into his face told a story of unspeakable trauma. He would never forget the chaos, the blood-streaked water, or the haunting cries of his best friends as they disappeared beneath the waves. Manuel and Carlos were gone, their bodies claimed entirely by the unrelenting efficiency of the great white sharks. The ocean, once a source of joy and adventure, had revealed its most merciless side. The ocean's dangers are as ancient as its depths, and while stories like Manuel and Carlos's are rare, they are powerful warnings of what lurks beneath. But the ocean's deadly embrace isn't limited to one corner of the world. It was a calm and sunny afternoon in Middle Harbour, Australia on January 4th. The waters off the estuary shimmered under the light, a tranquil scene framed by the dense brushland that lined the shore. Zetta Stedman, 27, had been looking forward to this day for weeks. Along with her friends, she had planned a picnic at Egg Rock, a picturesque spot nestled in the rugged coastline off the North Shore. The morning had unfolded beautifully. They had arrived on a motor launch, their laughter mingling with the soft hum of the boat's engine as they approached the secluded cove. Middle Harbour was known for its serene waters and abundant wildlife. Despite being relatively enclosed and far from the open ocean, the estuary's connection to Sydney Harbour meant it occasionally saw visits from larger marine creatures. Among these were bull sharks, notorious for their aggressive nature and ability to thrive in both salt and fresh water. Zetta and her friends, aware of the area's reputation, dismissed the risks. After all, the water seemed so inviting, clear, shallow, and harmless. Zetta's day had started early, her excitement evident as she prepared the picnic essentials. In her small kitchen, she carefully packed a wicker basket with freshly baked bread, ripe fruit, and other treats. The morning sunlight filtered through the windows, promising a warm and pleasant day. It was a perfect setting for their long-planned outing. By mid-morning, she was on her way to the dock, where her friends, Mr. and Mrs. Bowes, Mrs. Reeve, and her son-in-law Frederick waited, already exchanging light-hearted banter. By mid-afternoon, the group had settled into their picnic. The scent of the sea mingled with the aroma of their food. They lounged on blankets spread over the rocky shore, sharing stories and enjoying the stunning views of Middle Harbour. Nearby, cicadas buzzed, their sound blending with the gentle lapping of waves against the rocks. As the day progressed, Zetta, the ever-adventurous one, suggested they cool off with a swim. The others hesitated but eventually agreed, and soon the group was wading into the water, laughing as the coolness contrasted with the heat of the day. At first, they stayed close to the shore, splashing in waist-deep water. But as the minutes passed, Zetta ventured further out, drawn by the clarity of the water and the allure of the deeper blue beyond. She stood in chest-high water, enjoying the gentle sway of the current and the feeling of weightlessness. Her friends, Mr. and Mrs. Bowes, called out to her from closer to the shore, cautioning her not to go too far. Zetta waved back, smiling, and began to make her way toward them. Unbeknownst to the group, a predator was already nearby, a 14-foot bull shark. A master of ambush had silently entered the estuary. Its movements were deliberate, its senses tuned to the vibrations of its surroundings. It had likely been drawn by fish or other prey in the area, but now it had found something else, something larger, more tantalizing. The shark circled Zeta, its shadow passing unseen beneath the surface. It cocked its head slightly, sizing her up. Its movements were patient and calculated. Then, in a sudden burst of speed, it struck. Zetta felt a force like a vice clamp onto her lower body. The water around her exploded into a frenzy of movement and foam. She screamed, her voice piercing the tranquil air and sending her friends into a panic. From the shore, Mrs. Reeve, one of Zetta's friends, watched in horror. Perched on a rocky outcrop, she had a clear view of the attack. She screamed for her son-in-law Frederick, who had remained on board the motor launch a few feet away from Zeta. Frederick turned to see Zeta thrashing in the water. Without hesitation, he grabbed an oar and dove into the water, swimming toward her with all his strength. Frederick reached Zeta and swung the oar with desperate force, striking the water near the shark's head. The blows made little impact on the determined predator. The shark began pulling Zeta further into deeper waters, the reddish cloud of blood spreading ominously around her. Realizing the oar would not suffice, Frederick swam back to the motor launch and started the engine. He steered the boat toward the shark, aiming to ram it. The boat's hull struck the water with a loud splash, narrowly missing the predator. The shark released Zeta momentarily but lunged again, dragging her further into deeper waters. Frederick leaped from the boat, grabbing hold of Zeta's arm. With a strength born of desperation, he pulled her toward him. The shark resisted, thrashing violently, but Frederick's grip held firm. Finally, with a sickening tear, the shark relinquished its hold. Frederick pulled Zeta's torso onto the boat, but the lower half of her body was gone. The water around them was stained red. Zeta was unresponsive, her skin pale, her breathing shallow. Frederick called to the others on shore to call for help. The motor launch sped toward the nearest dock, but it was clear to all on board that Zeta's chances were slim. By the time they reached land and paramedics arrived, she was gone. In the days that followed, the attack sent shockwaves through the community. Reports of the incident dominated local news, and authorities issued warnings about sharks in Middle Harbor. The bull shark that attacked Zeta had ventured into the estuary, taking advantage of the shallow, warm waters that provide the perfect hunting grounds for this species. Bull sharks thrive in such environments, where their ability to adapt to low visibility and diverse prey makes them one of the most dangerous predators in these areas. It was a warm, sunny Saturday morning, December 2nd, 2023. Melaque Beach in Yales, western Mexico was alive with activity. Families gathered along the golden sands, and the calm waters hosted a swimming race that drew spectators and competitors alike. Among the visitors was Maria Fernandez Martinez, a 26-year-old mother accompanied by her 5-year-old daughter. Maria recently graduated with a degree in marine biology from the University of Guadalajara, had always loved the ocean. The beach had been her sanctuary since childhood, and she was now sharing that love with her daughter. It was a serene day filled with warmth and motherly love. But beneath the calm surface of the water, an unseen predator lurked, silently waiting for its moment to strike. As Maria and her daughter stepped onto the sand, they marveled at the pristine shoreline. The bay was sheltered by rugged lava outcrops, and the waters shimmered invitingly under the morning sun. After undressing down to their swimming suits, they waded into the shallows, giggling as they splashed each other and enjoyed the refreshing embrace of the sea. The excitement of the swimming race nearby added to the lively atmosphere, with officials' voices echoing over loudspeakers and spectators cheering on the participants. Everything seemed perfect, at least in the beginning. After a while, Maria pointed to a floating platform about 80 feet from the shore. The platform was popular with families and often served as a gathering spot for children to leap into the water. That morning, it was deserted, making it the perfect spot for Maria and her daughter to enjoy some quiet fun. They started swimming toward the platform, laughing as they moved through the warm, crystal-clear water. Unbeknownst to them, a 15-foot great white shark had entered the area, attracted by the commotion in the water. Renowned for their stealth and deadly precision, these apex predators can attack with terrifying speed. This one glided silently beneath the waves, honing in on its prey. The beachgoers, engrossed in the excitement of the swimming match and their own enjoyment, remained blissfully unaware of the lurking danger. As Maria and her daughter neared the platform, the great white struck suddenly, its powerful jaws clamping down on Maria's leg. She screamed in alarm, startling her daughter, who turned to see blood clouding the water around her mother. Maria thrashed desperately, trying to free herself as the predator's jaws clamped down with crushing force, tearing into her leg. The immense pain surged through her body, but her focus remained on protecting her daughter. She waved her daughter toward the platform, shouting for her to swim. The young girl hesitated, her face etched with fear, before obeying her mother's command and paddling towards safety on the platform. Maria fought fiercely, striking at the creature's head and kicking it with her free leg. She could feel its rough skin and sharp teeth cutting deeper. The water churned red as Maria's strength waned. Nearby, her daughter stood frozen on the floating platform, screaming in terror as the horrifying scene unfolded before her eyes. Just as abruptly as the attack began, the great white released Maria. In agony and barely able to move, Maria began struggling toward the shore. On the beach, bystanders noticed the commotion and rushed into the shallows. At first, some mistook Maria's frantic splashing for playful activity, but the sight of blood quickly erased any doubt. As she struggled toward the shore, a group of rescuers waded out to her, grabbing her arms and pulling her onto the sand. The scene that met them was horrifying. Maria's right leg was gone, severed below the hip. Blood poured from the wound, staining the golden sand crimson. Bystanders scrambled to help, tying a makeshift tourniquet around her leg to stem the bleeding. Paramedics arrived minutes later, but Maria had already lost consciousness. Despite their best efforts, the young mother could not be revived. The bite wounds, combined with severe blood loss, had claimed her life. Her daughter, safe and still on the floating platform, was quickly brought to shore by the lifeguards. Shaking and in shock, she was comforted by bystanders while arrangements were made to reunite her with her family. It was later, in the safety of familiar surroundings, that she learned the heartbreaking news: her mother had passed away. The devastation hit her hard, a loss that would stay with her for the rest of her life. Maria's final moments had been spent ensuring her daughter's safety, a true testament to her love and courage. In the days following the attack, flowers and tributes were placed on the beach where Maria lost her life. Strangers and friends alike mourn the loss of a vibrant young woman who has sacrificed everything for her daughter. It was November 30th, 2013 on the picturesque coastline of New South Wales, Australia. 19-year-old Zach Young and his three closest friends, Shaden Schrader, Kurt Gillian, and Lindsay Isaac, set out for a day of surfing at Campbell's Beach, a serene but remote stretch of sand renowned for its vibrant waves and stunning natural beauty. The group made their way to the Well, a popular reef break roughly 300 feet offshore near Rykes Point, ready for an afternoon of adventure. New South Wales is a haven for surfers, its coastline boasting some of the finest surf spots in the world. But beneath its beautiful waters lie a dangerous reality. The region is also home to one of the ocean's most efficient predators, the tiger shark. With its sharp senses, striped body, and reputation as a non-discriminating feeder, the tiger shark is second only to the great white in attacks on humans. These waters, while breathtaking, demanded respect, and those who venture in understand the risks they take. Zach, known for his radiant smile and unwavering faith, had recently earned his driver's license, a milestone that fueled his excitement to explore coastal surfing spots with his friends. A lifelong surfer, Zach's talent on the waves was matched only by the admiration he inspired off the board. Beyond his dedication to the sport, he was a cornerstone of his community, mentoring at-risk youth through a national youth ministry and sharing his experiences to inspire others. His energy, kindness, and passion for uplifting those around him made him a beloved figure to everyone who knew him. The ocean that Zach loved so deeply seemed serene that day, its clear waters reflecting the golden afternoon sunlight. The friends laughed as they paddled out, their boards cutting through the waves, unaware of the silent danger below. Beneath the shimmering surface, something stirred. Shadows moved with predatory intent, unseen and unprovoked, ready to strike. Just before 2 p.m., the illusion of calm shattered. from the depths, a dark shape surged upward. A massive tiger shark, estimated at 10 feet long, lunged at Zach with incredible force, its serrated teeth sinking into his legs. The peaceful day turned into a desperate fight for survival. The force of the attack knocked Zach from his board, and blood clouded the water as his friends realized the horrifying reality. Acting on pure instinct, Shaden, Kurt, and Lindsay paddled toward Zach, their adrenaline surging as they fought to save their friend. Despite the immediate danger, they reached him, using their boards and fists to drive the shark away. The predator, momentarily deterred, released Zach, retreating into the depths. The group quickly pulled Zach onto one of their boards. His injuries were catastrophic. His legs bore deep gashes and blood poured from the wounds, staining the water around them. Knowing the shark could return at any moment, the friends began the immense 15-minute paddle back to shore, their every movement filled with urgency and fear. Waves splashed over Zach's pale, trembling form as he clung to consciousness, weakly mouthing words of gratitude to his friends. Would their courage be enough to fend off a relentless predator and save their friend? The paddle back to shore felt like an eternity. They paddled with relentless urgency, their movements quick and focused as they glanced over their shoulders, scanning the water for any sign of the predator. The tension in their faces and the haste in their strokes made it clear the danger wasn't over. Finally, they reached the sand, pulling him onto the beach. When Zach reached the shore, he was in critical condition. His legs were severely mauled, and his body was pale from the significant blood loss. His breaths were shallow, and his friends had to carry him, his limp body a sign of the ferocity of the attack. Despite their best efforts, Zach's injuries were catastrophic, and his life was slipping away. Emergency services were called by nearby beachgoers who had witnessed the chaos. On the sands of Campbell's Beach, Zach's friends fought desperately to save him, their hands trembling as they tried to stop the bleeding. Gravely injured and weak, Zach, a person of deep faith, began to pray aloud, his voice faltering. With his final breath, he said, "I love you guys, I love you." A heartbreaking witness of their bond and Zach's caring spirit. Moments later, his body stilled, leaving his friends and the beach in stunned silence. The loss of Zach Young deeply shook his community and the surfing world. After the attack, Campbell's Beach was closed as water police, marine rescue teams, and Surf Lifesaving New South Wales scoured the waters for the tiger shark responsible. A biologist analysis confirmed the attacker was an 8-foot tiger shark, its powerful jaws leaving devastating wounds. Shortly after Zach's death, up to 400 surfers paddled out at Town Beach in Port Macquarie for a powerful memorial. They formed a circle on their boards, prayed, and held a minute of silence to honor Zach. Online, a tribute page overflowed with messages of love and sorrow, many recalling his warmth and generosity. Zach's friends, Shaden Schrader, Kurt Gillian, and Lindsay Isaac, expressed their determination to continue surfing, knowing Zach would have wanted them to embrace the waves they all loved. Their resilience and courage demonstrated the strength of their bond and their commitment to honoring his memory. The ocean's beauty often conceals its deadly nature. Zach Young's tragic encounter with a tiger shark emphasized this harsh reality. It was Sunday, November 29, 1964. For most people, it was just another quiet day. The usual crowd took a break from the routines of work and leisure, indulging in their usual uneventful Sunday plans. But Henry Borse was never part of the usual crowd. The 34-year-old underwater photographer was anything but typical. When he wasn't immersed in the deep, capturing the mysteries of the sea, he was playing his saxophone as the lead for a Melbourne-based rock and roll band. He lived for the thrill of the unknown, and that Sunday was no different. Henry's plan for the day was as bold as it was calculated, diving into the water surrounding Lady Julia Percy Island. This isolated volcanic island about 22 kilometers from Port Fairy wasn't just a striking landform, it was a haven for marine life. Beneath its towering cliffs and around its rugged shoreline, the ocean concealed a world of vibrant reefs, thriving seal colonies, and hidden caves waiting to be explored. Henry was particularly eager to film the seals, capturing their playful movements and interactions on camera. With his diving gear and spearfishing equipment, he prepared to plunge into these untamed waters. He knew the risks. The seals often attracted their apex predator, the great white shark. Yet for Henry, the promise of discovery outweighed the dangers as he readied himself for the adventures below the surface. Accompanying Henry were his close friends Dietmar Krupa and Fred Arndt, both seasoned divers who shared his hunger for adventure. Their destination, Lady Julia Percy Island, was set in stone. Not even the ominous tales of the sea or the concerned warnings of Henry's girlfriend Jill Ratcliffe, who was on board with them, could dissuade the trio. For these divers, the allure of filming seals and uncovering the unknown far outweighed the risks. Their journey began aboard a commercial shark fishing vessel docked at Moyne River Wharf. The weathered boat felt like a fitting getaway to the untamed waters ahead. Henry adjusted his black hooded wetsuit, its snug fit preparing him for the icy depths, his underwater camera secured and ready. As they neared the island's shores, the excitement on board was palpable. But amidst the anticipation, there was an unsettling conversation, one that would follow Henry as the day unfolded. They talked about Big Ben, a massive great white shark that supposedly roamed the waters near the island. Some claimed it was over 20 feet long, a monster of the deep with a reputation as monstrous as its size. Local fishermen had scars to prove its existence. Some shrugged it off as nothing more than a myth, a creature born of exaggeration. But others weren't so sure. Henry, however, wasn't worried. He had a job to do. Seals to film. A day to capture on film. It was just another story to add to his portfolio. At 12:45 p.m., Henry entered the water. He dove into the deep, the water cool and welcoming. The visibility was poor, but he was used to it. For over an hour, Henry filmed, capturing the seals as they danced in the waves, their sleek bodies gliding through the water. The serene beauty of the ocean was intoxicating. But when he returned to the boat around 1:15 p.m., something seemed wrong. The footage hadn't captured what he had hoped. Unsatisfied with the first film roll, Henry chose to dive again. This time, Dietmar and Fred joined him, each armed with a spear, ready to continue their exploration. As they descended into the murky depths, the lively atmosphere they had experienced earlier began to change. The group initially spotted the seals again, rolling playfully in the waves and darting between the divers with effortless grace. However, within moments, the seals suddenly vanished, their playful energy replaced by an eerie stillness in the water. The water, which had been full of life and movement, had grown still. Despite the poor visibility, it was clear something had shifted. They dove deeper to around 30 feet, searching for the seals, but the ocean gave no answers. After a few moments, they realized they needed to resurface. Something wasn't right. Henry was the first to break the surface, his head emerging into the open air. And then, without warning, something hit him fast and forceful. The impact was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. His body was violently yanked, pulled beneath the water with terrifying speed. In that instant, Henry understood what had attacked him. He threw his arms into the air and screamed, "Shark!" desperately trying to warn the others as he was pulled deeper into the water. The force of the current churned around him, unmistakable in its strength. His mask and snorkel were ripped from his face, and then he realized this was no ordinary shark. It was Big Ben. The massive shark had him. Its grip was unrelenting. Its jaws sank deep into his leg, tearing through flesh as if it were paper. Pain shot through him, but there was something more pressing. He was drowning. The shark didn't just bite, it pulled him under, dragging him into the abyss. In that moment, the world around him turned black. He was suffocating, every breath he tried to take only filling his lungs with water. Henry reached out, his hands grasping at the massive snout of the shark, but it was no use. The creature was too strong. Its teeth sank deeper into his leg as it shook him like a rag doll. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the shark released him. For a split second, there was a strange calm. But it wasn't peace, just a pause before the next onslaught. Henry swam to the surface, gasping for air. The events that had unfolded had shocked him. He reached down to his leg only to find it gone. The shark had torn it away. His friends, Dietmar and Fred, who had been nearby, quickly swam over to him. They had been caught off guard by the sudden violence, unable to react in time. But just as they reached him, the water shifted. The shark was back, hungry, relentless. It came at Henry again, teeth bared. But this time, Dietmar and Fred were ready. With spears in hand, they fought the shark off, each strike a desperate attempt to keep the predator at bay. The shark was unyielding, coming back again and again, 5 separate times in total. Each time the men fought, the spears bending under the strain. Back in the boat, Jill saw the commotion and quickly started the engine heading toward the source of the chaos. When she arrived, the sight was horrifying. Instinctively, she threw the safety line toward Henry and his friends. Henry's vision blurred with shock, but he heard Jill's frantic calls as he pulled the safety line. Within moments, he was hauled aboard, his body bleeding heavily. His friends worked quickly to keep him conscious as first aid was administered. The boat raced toward Port Fairy, where an ambulance awaited with a blood transfusion. Henry had lost 3.5 liters of blood, yet somehow he was still alive. The doctors worked quickly to stabilize him, but the road to recovery would be long. Despite the severity of the attack, Henry made an incredible recovery. Just weeks later, he was back in the water doing what he loved. In 1968, he released a documentary titled Savage Shadow, featuring raw footage of the attack, a stark reminder of the ocean's unpredictability. It was a clear, sunny day when Jeffrey Brazier steered the Matrix, an 80-foot catamaran, into the turquoise waters off Pelican Island. On board were 12 passengers, eager to experience the untouched beauty of Australia's western coastline. For Jeffrey, this day marked another step toward realizing his dream of making a living from the ocean, a passion he had held since childhood. He had been introduced to the sea before he could walk, spending his early years on boats with his parents. Growing up, his love for surfing, diving, and sailing deepened, but he wasn't sure how to turn it into a career. When Matrix Ocean Adventures hired him as a first mate, it felt like fate. Recently, the original skipper had stepped down, and Jeffrey was offered the chance to take the helm for the Matrix's maiden voyage. He accepted the challenge with quiet pride, determined to prove himself. The Matrix was a luxury catamaran, 80 feet long with 6 private cabins, a spacious deck, and modern amenities. The 13-day journey began in Perth, following the rugged coastline all the way to Broome. Along the way, the passengers enjoyed secluded bays, snorkeling in crystal-clear waters, and breathtaking scenery that Jeffrey knew well. On this day, they had reached the southeast corner of Pelican Island, a spot known as Wreck Point. It was early afternoon and the group had just finished lunch. Jeffrey carefully maneuvered the catamaran into position and dropped anchor. The Abrolhos Islands, famous for their vibrant coral reefs and marine life, lay beneath the water's surface. Parrotfish, wrasses, and groupers darted through the corals, while sea turtles grazed lazily. The drop-off, where the shallow reef gave way to the deep blue, was a favorite snorkeling spot. Jeffrey handed out masks and snorkels, explaining the underwater wonders. The passengers, eager and excited, prepared to enter the water. Jeffrey joined them, lowering himself into the warm, clear sea. As Jeffrey swam, the underwater world unfolded before him. Fish shimmered in the sunlight, weaving through vibrant coral formations. Sea anemones swayed gently, their tentacles dancing with the rhythm of the ocean. Near the edge of the drop-off, Jeffrey spotted a large sea turtle grazing on the coral. He waved to Rod Plug, one of the passengers nearby, signaling for him to take a closer look. Rod started toward Jeffrey but noticed water leaking into his mask. He stopped to adjust it, using a standard diver's hand signal to indicate he was heading back to the boat. Jeffrey glanced up briefly and saw the gesture, acknowledging it with a quick wave before turning his focus back to the reef, unaware of the dark shadow rising from the depths below. As Rod swam toward the Matrix, he tightened his mask, adjusting it against his face. The peaceful silence of the ocean surrounded him, until a sudden splash behind him shattered the stillness. Startled, he turned just in time to see the water churn violently. In an instant, a massive shark, jaws wide open, surged upward and slammed into Jeffrey. The shark was estimated to be around 20 feet long. Eyewitnesses later described it as having a dark back and pale underside with a dorsal fin about 3 feet high. With incredible force, the shark's bite severed Jeffrey's body in two. Blood spread through the water as the shark thrashed its head from side to side, holding onto Jeffrey. The snorkelers nearby froze, watching the chaos unfold. Panic swept through them as they swam desperately toward the catamaran. Their adrenaline surged, pushing them forward. Reaching the ladder, they scrambled aboard, breathless and in shock, trembling with fear. The crew quickly accounted for everyone else. No one else had been injured, but the passengers were in shock. From the deck, they could see the dark silhouette of the shark below the surface, carrying away half of Jeffrey's body. It moved with eerie calm, disappearing into the depths. Minutes later, the shark reappeared. Its snout and eyes broke the surface near Jeffrey's remains. It moved slowly, opening its jaws once more, and seized the rest of Jeffrey's body. Then, with a swirl of water, it vanished, leaving only silence behind. The crew radioed authorities, reporting the attack and requesting help. Emergency services advised them to return to Geraldton immediately. The Matrix motored toward the mainland, its passengers silent and pale. Word of the incident spread quickly, and local fishermen and tourists were warned to stay out of the water. Police and fisheries officers launched a search for the shark, hoping to recover Jeffrey's remains for a coroner's report. Helicopters and patrol boats circled the wreck point for hours, but the strong currents carried away any trace of the tragedy. By sunset, the search was called off. Rory McCall, a shark researcher, explained that there was no clear reason for the shark's appearance. There had been no fishing nearby, and the snorkelers hadn't been chumming in the water. However, the proximity to the continental shelf where deep-water predators often hunt made shark encounters possible. Great whites are known to traverse the western coast of Australia, though sightings near coral reefs are rare. Jeffrey's death shocked the tight-knit maritime community. Friends and colleagues remembered him as a man whose love for the ocean was matched by his kindness and generosity. His father described him as a carefree and dedicated young man who had turned his passion into a career. The passengers and crew of the Matrix struggled to process the tragedy, haunted by the memory of the once peaceful waters turning red. While shark attacks in Australian waters are rare, this event was a stark reminder that the ocean is wild and unpredictable. For Jeffrey Brazier, the sea that had been his sanctuary became, in an instant, the source of his untimely end. In the days that followed, Jeffrey's family received countless messages of sympathy. His father recalled how many friends Jeffrey had made, noting his ability to connect with everyone he met. The attack had left a deep wound in the community. No one had expected such a tragedy in such a beautiful, serene place.
It was June 10th, 2024, and Tommy Johnson, a curious 10-year-old boy, was on vacation with his family at Coral Cove Marine Park, a popular ocean-themed adventure destination. Tommy had always been fascinated by the ocean, and this trip was all he could talk about for weeks. The highlight of the park was the famous Walk with the Giants experience, an underwater adventure that let visitors trek through a massive shark tank. The Walk with the Giants allowed guests to wear specially designed air helmets and walk along the bottom of a giant aquarium surrounded by sharks and other marine life. It was a chance to get up close with the ocean's most feared predators in their own environment, all while being safely guided by professionals. With wide-eyed excitement, Tommy convinced his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, to let him participate. His parents, always protective, hesitated at first but eventually gave in, confident that the park's reputation and safety protocols would keep their son safe. So Tommy's dream finally came true. As the heavy helmet designed to supply air was placed on his head, his parents watched nervously. The helmet allowed him to walk underwater in the shark tank, alongside a group of other participants. The moment Tommy descended into the tank, he was mesmerized. The enormous Caribbean reef sharks swam gracefully around them, their sleek, agile bodies moving through the water like shadows. Among the group, Tommy was the smallest, his eyes wide with wonder as he walked, carefully placing each step on the sandy tank floor. From above, Mrs. Johnson's view was crystal clear. She could see her son moving among the sharks. Mr. Johnson stood beside her, more relaxed but keeping a close eye on Tommy as well. At first, everything was magical. The sharks, known for their usually calm demeanor, glided by with little more than a glance at the visitors. But then, something changed. One of the sharks, a 6-foot-long Caribbean reef shark, suddenly turned toward Tommy. It was curious, perhaps confused by the boy's small stature and the unfamiliar movement of the helmet. The shark nudged Tommy gently at first, causing him to stumble in the sand. Tommy tried to regain his balance, but in that moment of confusion, the shark lashed out and bit his leg. Above, Mrs. Johnson's heart stopped as she saw a cloud of blood fill the water around her son. Her scream tore through the air, a desperate, gut-wrenching cry that echoed across the viewing deck. The crowd around her froze in shock, eyes wide in horror. Before anyone could react, Mr. Johnson leaped into action. Without a second thought, he jumped into the tank, disregarding the fact that he wasn't equipped with the necessary gear. Inside the tank, the shark, after its initial bite, quickly swam off, leaving Tommy alone. Mr. Johnson reached his son in seconds, his instincts overriding any fear. He grabbed Tommy and pulled him to the surface where the park staff were already mobilizing. They swiftly assisted in getting Tommy out of the water and applied immediate first aid. Tommy was rushed to the nearest hospital, his leg injured but treatable. The doctors worked swiftly, cleaning and stitching the wound. Despite the severity of the situation, Tommy remained brave throughout and survived the attack. In the aftermath, an investigation into the incident was launched. Coral Cove Marine Park implemented enhanced safety measures to prevent such accidents from happening again, including stricter rules about the proximity of sharks to guests. However, the attraction did not close. In fact, the adrenaline rush of walking with sharks, even with the known risks, continued to draw thrill seekers from all over. Laura Bennett, a 28-year-old from Boulder, Colorado, was on vacation in Cancun, Mexico, with her volleyball team. Besides being a nurse in her daily life, volleyball was her passion, and she spent much of her free time playing matches. She loved her team, and this vacation was meant to be a fun getaway to enjoy the sun, play volleyball, and strengthen the bond between teammates. On February 12, 2011, the second day of their retreat, they had a great day. Late in the afternoon, they finished a volleyball game on the beach. While everyone else left to return to the resort, Laura decided to stay behind for a quick swim, while her friends headed back. The day was perfect, sunny, tropical, and carefree with no sign of danger. Unbeknownst to Laura, staff nearby had spotted 2 bull sharks that afternoon. They were on jet skis trying to search for the sharks and steer them away from the tourists. At the same time, they had just begun warning tourists on the beach to stay out of the water. But with many people spread out, it was difficult to notify everyone in time. They managed to divert one shark, but the other remained close to shore. Laura, unaware of the lurking threat, entered waist-deep water, about 3 feet deep, to wash off the sand from the volleyball game and cool off after hours of playing. As she rinsed off the sand absent-mindedly, she noticed people on jet skis waving at her and shouting in Spanish. They were too far away for her to understand what they were saying, and she mistook their gestures for friendly waves. Smiling, she waved back, feeling carefree and relaxed, unaware they were frantically trying to warn her of danger. Just as she continued splashing water on her legs, she suddenly felt something large and slimy brush hard against her left leg. Confused, she looked down and was horrified to see a bull shark clamp its powerful jaws around her thigh. At first, the shock numbed her and the pain didn't register immediately. But as the shark tightened its grip, a searing pain shot through her leg, triggering her survival instinct. She kicked and thrashed violently, trying to free herself. The shark suddenly released her leg, probably due to the trashing, giving her a moment for escape. Struggling to stay upright, Laura knew she had to get to shore. She fought against the pain and exhaustion, trying to push herself through the water. But just as she thought she was making headway, the predator returned with terrifying speed. This time, the shark struck from the side, its jaws latching onto her right arm. With whatever strength she had left, Laura used her left hand to strike at the shark's nose repeatedly, her blows becoming weaker with each strike. After several agonizing moments, the shark finally let go, retreating into the blood-stained waters for good. Now bleeding heavily and in shock, Laura struggled to stay on her feet, fighting to reach the shore. The staff on jet skis and those who had been warning people on shore immediately sprang into action as panic spread across the beach. The jet ski operators jumped into the shallow water, while the onshore lifeguards rushed toward Laura to help. The entire beach, now aware of the danger, watched in stunned silence as the rescue unfolded. Once on shore, Laura, despite the overwhelming pain and shock, assessed her situation with a nurse's instinct. With a shaky voice, she directed those around her on how to apply pressure to her wounds to slow the bleeding. Thanks to her quick instructions, she was able to prevent further blood loss until emergency services arrived. She was rushed to hospital in Cancun, where doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize her. Laura had lost a significant amount of blood, around 30 to 40%, but the timely intervention of the jet ski operators and her own medical knowledge helped prevent even greater damage. After a long recovery process, including multiple surgeries, she managed to keep both limbs, though she faced significant challenges in regaining functionality due to the severity of her injuries. Claire Bennett, a 38-year-old mother of 3, lived with her family in a cozy beachside home in Coogee, a coastal suburb of Sydney. Claire was a passionate lover of the ocean, spending most of her free time with her children by the water, snorkeling and collecting seashells. Known for her adventurous yet nurturing nature, she was the kind of mother who balanced fun and exploration with a cautious eye over her kids. Her husband, Daniel Bennett, a senior project manager at one of Australia's leading engineering companies, was often away on work trips. This time, he was in Germany overseeing a major infrastructure development, leaving Claire to care for their children, Ella, Noah, and Olivia, back home. Despite his frequent travel, the family enjoyed a comfortable and happy life, with the beach being their favorite retreat. With Daniel away, Claire decided to take the children to Bondi Beach on December 15, 2015, a familiar and favorite spot for the family. It was a bright and sunny Australian summer day, and Claire felt the pull of the ocean. Her 3 children, aged between 8 and 12, busily built sandcastles near the shore. Claire, always protective and watchful, reminded them to stay close and reassured them that Jack Wilson, the local lifeguard, was nearby if needed. She knew the lifeguard well and trusted him to keep an eye on her children while she snorkeled, not knowing that she would soon need the lifeguard the most. After wading into the water, Claire enjoyed her first short dive, resurfacing with a small collection of seashells and sea creatures. The children eagerly gathered around her, fascinated by her findings, their faces lighting up with excitement. Their joy encouraged her to venture farther out for a second dive, eager to explore more of the underwater world she loved so much. This time, Claire swam about 300 feet from the shore, fully submerged in her own world, peacefully exploring the water beneath her. Further out, a male paddleboarder skimmed across the water, enjoying the calm as he surveyed the blue depths below. Suddenly, his breath caught in his throat. Just beneath the surface, gliding silently, was a massive dark shape, a great white shark, easily 19 feet long, moving closer to the shore. Panic surged through him as he screamed out warnings, frantically trying to alert those in the water. His voice cut through the air, but Claire, still submerged in her dive, remained oblivious to the danger approaching her. The shark, moving with silent intent, circled closer. Just as Claire surfaced to catch her breath, the shark surged forward with terrifying speed, breaking through the water and crashing into her. She barely had time to react before the shark's powerful jaws clamped down, pulling her under. Blood erupted into the water as Claire thrashed violently, struggling to escape, but the shark's strength was overwhelming. In seconds, she was dragged beneath the surface, the water churning around them. On the shore, people froze in horror, their laughter replaced by screams. Claire's children, focused on their sandcastles, sensed something was wrong. Looking toward the water, they stood in shock, unable to comprehend the sight of their mother struggling against the massive predator. For a brief moment, Claire resurfaced, gasping for air as blood swirled around her. But before she could call for help, she disappeared again beneath the waves. The shark, having delivered its fatal blow, vanished into the depths as quickly as it had appeared. The attack was shockingly fast, over in moments. Jack Wilson, the lifeguard, had seen the commotion from the shore. He grabbed his rescue board and raced into the water with all his strength, determined to reach Claire. Meanwhile, the paddleboarder and two nearby swimmers had also seen the attack and were the first to reach her. They pulled Claire's limp body onto the paddleboard, her skin pale, her breath shallow. Water poured from her mouth, and though she was still alive, the signs of life were fading quickly. As they reached the shallows, Jack was ready to assist, quickly helping them carry her onto the sand. Without hesitation, Jack began performing CPR. His hands pressed rhythmically on Claire's chest, forcing water out of her lungs. Blood continued to pool around them, staining the sand. A small crowd gathered, some in shock, others shouting for help. But Claire's children stood just a few feet away, unable to move, their faces frozen in horror. Though Claire continued to show faint signs of life, it was clear she was rapidly slipping away. The shark's bite had inflicted devastating injuries, massive blood loss and internal trauma. Even as paramedics arrived and took over CPR, the efforts were growing increasingly desperate. Despite all their attempts, Claire's pulse weakened and finally stopped. She succumbed to her injuries, severe blood loss and trauma from the shark's attack, on the shore where she had once found so much joy. Claire's body was gently covered, and her children were led away, their eyes still locked on the spot where their mother's life had ended. In the weeks that followed, Claire's husband and many of her family and friends were devastated by the loss. They held her funeral on the very beach where she had taken her final breaths, surrounded by loved ones. Her children, clutching the seashells their mother had collected earlier that day, would forever hold on to those last memories of her. Kai Sorensen was 23 years old, a Miami native who lived and breathed the ocean. Born on May 14, 1993, Kai spent his life near the water, captivated by the vibrant marine life that called Florida's coral reefs home. For Kai, the ocean was not just a backdrop to his life, it was his playground and his greatest love. Scuba diving and spearfishing were his favorite escapes, and he often sought solace beneath the waves, chasing the thrill of the hunt and the peace of the deep. On June 24, 2016, Kai joined his best friend, Nico Arvidsson, and Nico's wife, Layla, for a spearfishing trip off the coast of Miami. The trio had set their sights on the waters near Fowey Rock Light, a well-known lighthouse that marks the spot where the calm, shallow waters of Biscayne Bay meet the deeper, open ocean. Nico and Layla weren't locals. They had driven down from Orlando to spend the weekend with Kai. They rented a small, cozy beach house near Key Biscayne, a quiet escape from the city where they could relax and enjoy some time by the sea. It was the perfect blend of adventure and relaxation, and they were excited to make the most of their time together. That morning, the three friends anchored their boat near Fowey Rock Light. Kai and Nico geared up for their dive, while Layla stayed on the boat, managing the catch and keeping watch. Kai, the more enthusiastic diver, was the first to jump in, with Nico close behind. They descended into the 20-foot deep water, immediately immersed in a vibrant underwater world. Schools of colorful fish darted among the corals, and the occasional barracuda glided by, reflecting sunlight from the surface. Spotting a large snapper, Kai aimed his spear gun and fired, quickly adding another catch to their haul. They took turns diving down and surfacing for air, enjoying the peaceful isolation of the underwater landscape. Kai had already speared a couple of fish, securing them on his stringer, while Layla was busy gathering the catch on the boat. After about half an hour of repeated dives, the two decided to head back to the surface for a break, their movements graceful and practiced. As Kai broke through the surface of the water, he glanced back toward the boat, feeling satisfied with the fish he had caught. He gave Layla a thumbs up, signaling that he was ready to take a break and show off their catch. Layla smiled back, feeling reassured by the signal, but her relief turned to shock when she heard Kai's sudden scream pierce the air. Kai's expression shifted from calm to panic, thrashing in the water as his spear gun slipped from his grip. Nico, still submerged a few feet away, saw the sudden thrashing above and quickly kicked up to the surface. He reached the top just in time to see Kai struggling desperately. Amid the chaos, Nico's eyes locked onto a dark fin slicing through the water, a shark unmistakable and menacing. The water around Kai was tinged red, swirling with blood, a stark contrast against the blue ocean. Before Nico could react, Kai was yanked violently beneath the surface, disappearing in an instant. Panicked and shocked, Nico swam frantically toward the boat, his strokes uneven as fear gripped him. Layla, already on the radio, was calling emergency services, her voice shaking as she relayed the horrifying details. Nico pulled himself onto the boat, his mind reeling, his eyes fixed on the water, desperately searching for any sign of Kai. But his friend was gone, lost beneath the chaotic, blood-stained surface. As they waited for help, Nico and Layla were advised by emergency services to stay out of the water, no matter how desperately they wanted to search for Kai themselves. When the emergency responders finally arrived, the search began in earnest. The Coast Guard worked tirelessly, combing the waters and surrounding coral, but as the hours passed, they found nothing. As night fell, hopes dimmed, but the search continued. The next day, 23 divers from the Miami Mori Dive Club joined the effort. Hours into the search, Kai's body was found wedged deep within the coral, miles from the original spot of the attack, with his spear gun floating nearby. He had suffered severe injuries, likely succumbing to blood loss and drowning before rescuers could reach him. An investigation into the incident later concluded that Kai had fallen victim to a 16-foot great white shark. Nico and Layla were left heartbroken, haunted by the memories of that day and struggling to cope with the loss of their friend. Simon Nellist was a devoted nature lover who found his true passion in the ocean after moving to Australia. Originally from Penzance in Cornwall, UK, Simon had served in the British Royal Air Force, where he completed 2 tours in Afghanistan, working as part of the military support team. After leaving the military, Simon moved to Australia, where the warm waters of Sydney captured his heart. He embraced the Australian lifestyle, living with his fiancée in a quiet coastal town and regularly enjoying the ocean. The couple's wedding plans were repeatedly postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and just weeks before their big day, their dreams were tragically cut short. Simon led a happy life, surrounded by the sea he loved and the woman he planned to marry. An avid swimmer, he used his daily swims to stay fit and prepare for events like the Malabar Magic Ocean Swim, which was set to take place the following weekend. On February 16, 2022, Simon put on his wetsuit and headed out for a routine training session. The day was perfect. The sea was calm and the sun shone brightly. New South Wales, where Simon swam regularly, employs a range of shark control measures, including nets, drones, and tagging programs to protect beachgoers from potential shark encounters. These efforts have been in place for nearly a century, focusing on relocating dangerous species like great whites, tiger sharks, and bull sharks away from popular swimming areas. Despite these precautions, sharks are still occasionally spotted near the shore. Simon, however, was a strong critic of these control measures. He believed that shark nets and drum lines did more harm than good, endangering marine life without truly protecting people. To him, the ocean was the natural habitat of its creatures, and humans needed to respect that balance. He often shared his views online, passionately arguing that these methods disrupted the delicate ecosystem of the sea and failed to address the real issue. For Simon, the sea was a place of freedom and beauty, not something to be controlled or feared. Simon experienced this sense of freedom and beauty profoundly as he entered the waters for his usual training route near Little Bay, a tranquil spot just south of Malabar Beach. The water was calm, and the late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the sea. Fishermen stood on the rocks nearby, casting their lines, and others were swimming or paddling in the water, enjoying the peaceful surroundings. As Simon swam steadily through the water, unaware of the danger lurking below, a massive great white moved silently in the depths beneath him. At around 4:30 p.m., less than 500 feet from the shore, the great white shark made its move. The shark, over 10 feet long, burst out of the water with Simon clamped in its mouth, lifting him into the air with a force so powerful that it resembled a car smashing into the ocean, creating a colossal splash. Simon, his screams shattered the air, echoing off the cliffs and reaching the horrified onlookers gathered on the rocks at Bucking Point. The fishermen and swimmers, frozen in shock, could do nothing but watch, powerless to intervene in the violent scene unfolding before their eyes. The predator twisted and shook, tearing Simon in two with a horrifying force that sent blood and foam churning into the water. The shark continued its assault, ripping apart Simon's body as though it were nothing, its powerful jaws snapping shut again as it swallowed parts of his remains before finally diving back into the depths. Simon Nellist, age 35, tragically lost his life in the attack, marking a devastating end to a life spent embracing the ocean he loved. Immediately after the terrifying attack on Simon, the Coast Guard and lifeguards patrolled the area in boats and on jet skis, desperately trying to find the shark responsible. Smart drum lines were deployed into the location, but the shark was never found. His fiancée, who had been eagerly planning their wedding just weeks away, was devastated and chose not to speak to the media, overwhelmed by the sudden and tragic loss. Locals who knew Simon and often greeted him during his daily swims said that it was unusual for swimmers in the area to wear wetsuits. The water was warm, and most bathers did not wear them. Experts have suggested that Simon, in his black wetsuit, was mistaken for a seal from below. In the wake of the attack, Little Bay Beach was closed to the public, a somber response to the tragedy that unfolded on its shores. It was mid-August 2004, off the coast of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, where three friends, all in their mid to late 20s, had come to unwind after months of intense fieldwork. Tristan Dawes, Owen Carter, and Eva Martinez had met during their marine research projects and quickly bonded over their shared passion for the ocean and their mutual love of fishing. Eager for some well-deserved relaxation, they rented a boat and set out early on the second day of their trip, armed with rods, reels, and a cooler stocked with cold beers. Their plan was simple: fish, laugh, and enjoy the peacefulness of the Atlantic waters. By mid-morning, They had anchored their boat a few miles offshore, in waters known for their rich marine life. The sun reflected off the gentle waves, and the atmosphere aboard the boat was light and carefree. As they cast their lines into the water, they chatted about their latest research, the joy of being out on the water, and the anticipation of a good catch. Not long after, Tristan felt a powerful tug on his line. His rod bent sharply, and the real word as whatever he had hooked began to pull. Excitement filled the air as Tristan struggled to reel in what they all assumed was a large fish. But before anyone could fully comprehend what was happening, the surface of the water erupted, revealing the sleek, unmistakable form of a 17-foot great white shark. The friends stared in shock, their excitement turning to dread in an instant. The shark thrashed violently, pulling hard against the line. Tristan barely had time to react before the shark jerked with immense force, yanking him overboard and into the water. The ocean swallowed Tristan in an instant. Panic flashed in Owen and Eva's eyes as they watched their friend disappear beneath the surface. Moments later, Tristan resurfaced, but the nightmare had already begun. The shark, driven by its predatory instincts, had bitten down on Tristan's left leg, leaving a deep, gaping wound just below the knee. The pain was excruciating, but Tristan's fight was far from over. As he fought to get back to the boat, the shark struck again, this time clamping onto his right leg at the calf. The force of the bite fractured the bone and left another deep wound. Blood clouded the water around Tristan, and the situation grew dire. On the boat, Owen hesitated, uncertain whether jumping in would help, as Eva frantically looked around for boats and screamed, but saw no one. He tried to strike the shark with his fishing rod, but it was just out of reach. Owen knew that jumping in could be deadly, which made him hesitate on the boat, but he also knew he had to act. Then, for a brief moment, the shark paused its attack, circling slowly as if assessing the situation. Seeing his chance, Owen finally jumped into the water, seizing the only opportunity to save his friend. The shark was still present, but Owen's quick move caught it off guard. He grabbed Tristan under the arms, and together with Eva's help from the boat, they managed to haul him on board just as the shark began to circle again, this time more aggressively. Once on the boat, Owen and Eva quickly switched from friends to professionals. Their marine biology training, especially in emergency responses, took over. They applied pressure to the wounds, and Owen quickly tore off his shirt, fashioning it into a makeshift tourniquet. Tristan was conscious, but weak, slipping in and out of awareness as they worked to stabilize him. Eva grabbed the radio and contacted emergency services. With the shark still circling, Owen started the boat and sped back to shore. The usually tranquil ride back, which took about 10 minutes, was now a blur of adrenaline and focused action. Tristan's life hung in the balance, but Owen and Eva's quick thinking and well-honed skills kept him alive until they reached the dock. As they arrived at Jacksonville Beach, paramedics were already waiting, alerted by Eva's call. Tristan was quickly transferred to an ambulance and rushed to Jacksonville Memorial Hospital, where a team of surgeons was ready to perform emergency surgery. Hours later, after tense waiting, the news came that Tristan's condition had been stabilized. The surgery had been successful, but his road to recovery would be long. However, doctors were optimistic that with time, Tristan would regain full mobility. In the aftermath, the incident was hailed as one of the best-handled shark attack emergencies in recent history. Thanks to Owen and Eva's quick actions and calm under pressure, Tristan's life was saved. It was a warm summer morning on July 8, 2017, when a father and son embarked on what was meant to be a day of bonding and relaxation on the open sea. But what began as a peaceful adventure soon turned into a harrowing fight for survival. Mark Langford, a seasoned sailor and devoted father, had been planning this trip for months. His son, Ethan, a 16-year-old with a deep love for the ocean, was thrilled. The two had always shared a bond over the sea, and this trip was intended to strengthen that connection. As the first rays of sunlight kissed the horizon, they set sail from a small marina on Florida's eastern coast, excitement hanging in the air. The ocean was calm that morning, its surface reflecting the golden hues of the rising sun. After a few hours of sailing, they reached a secluded bay, far from the bustling beaches and crowded tourist spots. It was the perfect place to anchor and take a break. The heat was already intensifying, and the crystal-clear water below looked incredibly inviting. Ethan, unable to resist the call of the sea, asked his father if he could take a quick dip. Mark, always cautious but confident in the safety of the area, agreed. As Ethan dove into the water, he cut through the surface with a splash and emerged with a grin, the cool water providing immediate relief from the summer heat. For a few blissful moments, everything was perfect. The world seemed to stand still as Ethan swam near the boat, enjoying the freedom and serenity of the open water. Mark watched his son, a smile of contentment on his face, unaware of the dark shadow moving beneath the waves. Then, without warning, Ethan felt something brush against his leg. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible touch, but enough to make him pause. He glanced around, his heart beginning to race, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Brushing it off as his imagination, he continued to swim, unaware of the danger closing in on him. Suddenly, the water around him erupted in a frenzy of movement. Ethan felt a sharp, searing pain in his calf as a massive tiger shark clamped onto his leg. The force of the bite was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a pain so intense it stole the breath from his lungs. He tried to scream, but the shock rendered him silent. All he could do was thrash wildly, his body instinctively fighting to break free. Mark, still on the boat, heard the splashing and looked up, his heart dropping as he saw his son struggling in the water. Without a second thought, he dove in, his only thought to save his boy. He swam furiously toward Ethan. Mark grabbed Ethan, trying to pry him free from the shark's relentless grip. But the predator was too powerful. The water was thick with blood, and every second felt like an eternity. Mark fought with everything he had, but it wasn't enough. The shark, undeterred by Mark's attempts, turned its attention to him, delivering a brutal bite to his arm. The pain was immediate and excruciating. Mark felt himself being pulled under, his strength fading as the shark's jaws tightened around his arm. For a moment, it seemed all hope was lost, both father and son trapped in the terrifying grip of the ocean's apex predator. But fate had other plans. Just when it seemed the end was near, help arrived. A nearby yacht, anchored a short distance away, had a seasoned skipper on board, a retired Navy diver named Tom Mitchell. Tom had spent years navigating the world's most dangerous waters, but nothing could have prepared him for the scene he witnessed that day. Without hesitation, he grabbed his spear gun and dove into the water, his mind focused solely on saving the Langfords. Tom moved swiftly, his experience and training guiding his every move. He reached Mark and Ethan just as the shark was preparing to drag them further into the depths. With precision honed from years of diving, Tom fired the spear gun, striking the shark just behind its gills. The predator recoiled, momentarily stunned, and released its grip on both Mark and Ethan. Tom quickly grabbed them both, pulling them toward the surface with a strength that belied his age. By the time they reached the boat, both Mark and Ethan were barely conscious, their bodies marked by the brutal attack. Tom didn't waste a second. He pulled them aboard and immediately began administering first aid, his hands moving with the calm efficiency of someone who had been in life-or-death situations before. With the bleeding somewhat under control, Tom radioed for help, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The minutes that followed felt like hours, but finally, the sound of a helicopter approaching broke the tension. The rescue team airlifted Mark and Ethan to Flagler Hospital in St. Augustine, where they were rushed into surgery. The shark's bites had caused severe damage, and the blood loss had taken a toll on their bodies. For days, Mark and Ethan lay in the hospital, but with each passing day, they slowly regained strength, their bodies fighting to heal. When they finally awoke, groggy but alive, there was an overwhelming sense of relief. They had survived. The odds had been stacked against them, yet they had made it through, thanks in no small part to Tom Mitchell's heroic actions. On the morning of August 12, 1993, David Miles and 4 close friends set out for a day of abalone diving along the northern coast of California. This was a familiar routine for the group. Every few weeks they would make the trip to these coastal waters, not only for the adventure and camaraderie, but also for the opportunity to gather abalone, a prized shellfish that could earn them extra money when sold to local markets. As they waded into the cool water, the sun cast a golden hue over the rugged coastline, adding to the sense of promise the day held. With their dive tube floating alongside them as a safety marker, the group swam out from the shore. Laughter and conversation filled the air as they prepared for the dive. They dove beneath the waters, and for about 30 minutes David and his friends explored beneath the surface, each heading in their own direction and occasionally surfacing for air. The clear water revealed patches of rocky terrain below, where they hoped to spot the distinctive shells of abalone. Moving effortlessly through the water, the group explored at their own pace. As the others ventured farther out, David decided to circle around a large rock formation that caught his eye. He carefully scanned the crevices for abalone, but after a few moments of searching, he realized there was nothing noteworthy. With a calm kick of his fins, he began to ascend toward the surface, ready to regroup. While ascending, David was captivated by the underwater scenery, distracted by the swaying kelp and the flicker of fish darting between rocks. His mind wandered as he took in the serene beauty around him, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. Suddenly, without warning, he was violently struck from behind, jolting him out of his peaceful reverie. A massive great white shark, estimated to be 18 to 20 feet long, lunged at David. The shark swallowed him head first, its jaws closing around his head and shoulders. David could feel his head inside the shark's mouth and could even see light filtering through the shark's teeth. The shark bit down again, now grabbing him past his shoulder blades. David stayed motionless, fearing that if he struggled, the shark would thrash and tear him apart. In a stroke of luck, the shark opened its jaws briefly. David took his chance, pushing himself free from the shark's mouth. His adrenaline surged, and he frantically swam 30 yards to a nearby rock formation. He discarded his weight belt to swim faster, desperately trying to get out of the water before the shark attacked again. Luckily, he made it to the rock formation and climbed out of the water. He screamed for help, his voice carrying over the waves. Mike Swartzel, one of David's closest friends, surfaced for air after his dive and was the first to hear the desperate cries. Looking toward the rocks, he spotted David in clear distress. Without hesitation, Mike swam toward him, reaching the rocks where David had pulled himself out of the water. Within minutes, the whole group was gathered on the rock, fully aware of the gravity of the situation. One of David's friends brought the dive tube with him, knowing it would be crucial for their return. David's injuries were severe, and time was of the essence. The shark had bitten through his scalp, leaving multiple lacerations on his head and neck, and his back was laid open with deep wounds, as if by a fillet knife. They knew they had to get David back to shore quickly, but he was terrified to re-enter the water. After 30 agonizing minutes of convincing him, the friends decided to make the dangerous swim back, even though the shark was still active nearby. They jumped back into the water, using the dive tube for support as they made their way toward the shore. David, weakened by blood loss and slipping into shock, clung to the tube while Mike pulled him along, all the while painfully aware that the shark could return at any moment. As they swam, David became increasingly lethargic, and Mike feared his friend might lose consciousness before they could reach safety. Still, they pressed forward, determined to get David to shore. Fortunately, they were not attacked again, and they finally made it back to the beach. The beach was located beneath a large cliff, making access difficult. David had to be airlifted from the shore by a Coast Guard helicopter and transported to Mendocino Coast Hospital in Fort Bragg. His injuries were severe, requiring more than 100 stitches to close, but miraculously, he survived. Later, in an interview, David described his experience as akin to winning the lottery. And I think we can all agree, this truly was a life-or-death lottery that David was incredibly fortunate to win. Thanks for watching the worst shark attacks ever recorded. Now tell us in the comments, do you still believe the researchers? If you're not done exploring, there's another video waiting for you on your end screen. We hope to see you there.